Chapter 205. Quanzhou of course was not a dog. How could the mythical level magical beast from the western continent, the legendary world-destroying demonic wolf Fenrir, be a dog? In fact, most of the immortal beasts had their own unified bloodline. Even if their appearance was similar to other spirit beasts, there was actually a big difference. Let alone, even if Fenrir was really a dog, it was still a western continent dog. Therefore, when the Beast Master School elders thought that they had grasped the spirit dog attribute of the moon spirit, they resorted to the special beast collar and tried to use the dog trainer's whip to restrain the demonic wolf Fenrir, which doomed them to a tragic end. From the beginning to the end, Fenrir was never really suppressed by the beast collar. Although the spiritual treasure level's power still had a certain impact on it, when the opponent was completely unprepared, it was easy for it to suddenly attack and injure the enemy. The spirit of the beast collar itself was not weak. With Fenrir's current infant form, it was still difficult to contend against it. However, if it was the defenseless spirit, then it was another matter. The spirit had no entity, which was extremely difficult to be injured. However, for Fenrir, who specialized in swallowing, its incorporeal form was the most defenseless form. With one bite, half of the spirit's body disappeared forever, never to be reborn again. At the same time, the two King Pill elders, whose primordial spirit was connected to the spirit, also suffered a backlash. Their primordial spirit was damaged and the King Pill became dim. As for the demon wolf, it felt an indescribable power filling its body. This sneak attack was really a great nourishment, causing its body to swell several times in an instant, and its ferocious aura overflowed to the heavens. Next, as long as it completely swallowed the artifact spirit, it would obtain an immeasurable amount of growth. However, just as the demon wolf was about to lower its head to swallow the beast-taming collar, a thunderous roar resounded from the crown cloud peak. Evil creature. That huge figure was even faster than the sound. Before the demonic wolf could react, it saw a shadow in front of it. That shadow turned into a tens of meters tall giant, whose claw grabbed its neck. The strength of the claw was very strong. The previously insufferably arrogant demonic wolf was firmly caught. Its four limbs struggled to struggle, but it was useless. A moment later, the wolf's howl turned into a whimper, which was extremely miserable. Sure enough, there is always a higher mountain. No one had expected the Tiger King to act so decisively. When he saw the changes on the crown cloud peak, he did not hesitate at all. He put down Wang Lu and the others and turned to go up the mountain. At that time, he clearly only needed one more move to heavily injure his opponent, but he was unwilling to waste even the time to make one move. How wise. In the full moon valley, Wang Lu slowly withdrew his sword of Mount Kuan. Behind him, Lu Li has entered the state of brilliant sword heart, and Shao Qi's monk staff also propped up a piece of Zen light. The Trinity defense system has been formed. Even if Tiger King went all out, it would still be difficult for him to break the defense in one or two moves. However, by delaying one or two moves, Fenrir could calmly swallow the beast collar and then escape. The other party's reaction was faster and more accurate than expected. The impulsive and easily angered Tiger King in the data wasn't that easy to deal with. Looking at the huge figure on the crown cloud peak, Wang Lu chuckled. You have some skill, but it's a pity that it's meaningless in the face of absolute power. Shao Qi could not help but say, absolute power is used too many times. Then how about changing it to mortal wisdom? At the same time, on the crown cloud peak, seeing the mess around him, Tiger King Lei Jin's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He could not wait to directly squeeze this wolf cub into minced meat. However, the immortal beast aura that came from his hand made him unable to do it. Now, it seemed like this demon wolf was naturally not the moon spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain, but the immortal beast's grade was about 80 to 90%. At least, it was a quasi-immortal beast, which was priceless. Although the sneak attack on the tool spirit caused the spiritual treasure to be damaged, and the two King Pill elders were injured, compared to the value of the immortal beast, it was nothing. Half of the tool spirit's body was swallowed, but as long as it returned to the spiritual treasure space to be nourished for 10 days to half a month, it would recover. The two King Pill elders were not even worth mentioning. Even if they died, it wouldn't be a problem. Right now, the most important thing was to completely grasp the demon wolf in his hand and not let it run away. Lei Jin tightened his grip, and the Yuanying stage magical power began to infiltrate the demon wolf's body. Not only did it place a restriction on its body, but it also gradually converged on the primordial spirit contract, trying to disintegrate the existing contract and replace it with the Beast Master School contract. Thanks to his Yuanying stage cultivation base, his irascible personality allowed him to calmly think of many things in a flash. The grade of this demon wolf was comparable to an immortal beast, and the master-servant contract on the primordial spirit was the work of a grandmaster. Obviously, this was a spirit beast that belonged to a high-rank sect, so plundering it at will would be a great trouble. However, as long as he replaced it with the Beastmaster School contract, even if the Beastmaster School eventually learned that the immortal beast belonged to Shengjing's sect, they would still dare to confront it. After all, it was a high-rank sect, so the word reason was still somewhat useful. It was just that breaking this contract was a bit exhausting. Tiger King was not good at this kind of exquisite skill, and the two elders who were good at it were still sitting cross-legged in meditation, trying to restore the primordial spirit injury that they just suffered, so they couldn't help even the slightest bit. However, with the Yuanying stage cultivation base, a little bit of grinding would always be able to wear down the contract mark. It would just take a bit more time. Moreover, it just so happened that the several people in the Full Moon Valley thought that they had an opportunity. Looking back at the several people in the Full Moon Valley who were ready to make trouble, Tiger King could not help but shake his head. You think you're smart? The unexpected appearance of the demon wolf did bring some trouble to the Beastmaster School, causing an unplanned reduction in manpower. However, Tiger King's arrangement in the Crown Cloud Peak and Full Moon Valley had left him with double the leeway. Even if he was tied up at this time and had no time to spare, the rest of the Beastmaster School's manpower was enough to suppress those few juniors who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. In the face of absolute strength, tricks and intrigues were suicidal. Do it. Along with Tiger King's order, all the cards that the Beastmaster School had arranged inside and outside the Full Moon Valley were all turned over. Tiger King simply had no interest in fighting back and forth with the opponent. In the first round, he wanted to completely crush the opponent. 5 King Pill Elders, more than 10 spirit beasts with cultivation base around King Pill, as well as Lei Jin's pet, the winged tiger whose cultivation base had reached the peak of King Pill. The comprehensive strength of the opponent was more than 10 times that of the opponent. Not to mention that the opponent was only a middle-level King Pill with 2 low-level Shudan. Even if it was a Yuanying stage Taoist master, they would only be able to barely escape, they would not have the capital to fight back. And if coupled with the 10,000 spirit lock termination array, even a Yuanying stage Taoist master would find it difficult to escape. In the Full Moon Valley, the cold wind whistled, the malicious spirits rampaged, and the vortex of Yin Qi formed a tornado barrier under the influence of the 10,000 spirit lock termination array, preventing anyone from entering or leaving. Oh, this lineup is really luxurious. In the face of this almost hopeless situation, Wang Lu smiled even more happily. His eyes swept around. In addition to the King Pill Elders and the King Pill level spirit beasts, the hundreds of elite disciples of the Beastmaster School were also ready to make a move. Unfortunately, an incompetent general has exhausted the entire army. If you want to blame someone, blame the incompetence of the commander. The next moment, Wang Lu's complexion turned solemn. 7th Madam, release the soul. Shao Qi nodded his head. With a shake of his Buddhist staff, a white-robed Buddhist monk came out from the Buddhist staff and stood side by side with Shao Qi. The white-robed Buddhist monk looked solemn, and his eyes were gentle and devout. As soon as he appeared, he brought along a soft warm wind, dispersing the gloomy and ghostly atmosphere around him. It was the spiritual treasure of the Buddhist staff. After summoning the spiritual treasure, Shao Qi immediately recited the scripture together with him. The woman's voice was no longer frivolous and free as it was in the past. Instead, it became solemn and serene. Each syllable was like a majestic ancient bell, buzzing. This was an introductory Zen scripture that could be found everywhere in the 9 regions, the 6 paths of reincarnation scripture. When Shao Qi and her partner, the spiritual treasure, recited together, it had an inconceivable magical ability. As soon as the scripture was recited, the countless malicious spirits around them shrieked in unison, as if they were suffering from an unbearable pain. However, as soon as these shrieking sounds came, the chilly wind immediately suppressed the light of the Buddhist scripture to a radius of 10 meters around Shao Qi. The King Pill Elder, who presided over the 10,000 spirits' great array, laughed out loud. What a joke. With just the power of a single person, you actually want to release the soul of thousands of wrong spirits in this valley? Do you think you're Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva? Shao Qi's complexion remained unchanged. She just silently recited the scripture, maintaining the light of Buddhist scripture under the suppression of the 10,000 spirits' great array. Then Wang Lu took a step forward, right at the intersection between the light of Buddhist scripture and the chilly wind. You must know that a single spark can start a prairie fire. His voice fell in the valley like a substance. The next moment, the hundreds of people inside and outside the Full Moon Valley simultaneously felt the ground shaking. It was as if there were thousands of troops and horses galloping here, and also like the roaring of the Yangtze River. Its momentum was torrential and invincible. This is the resonance of the feng shui vein? The elder who presided over the grand array suddenly panicked. The feedback force from the grand array was so strong that the first vibration almost made him lose control of the grand array. It was as if the entire full moon valley was rebelling against him. With just one step, Wang Lu could actually trigger the resonance of the feng shui vein? What a joke. If he really had that ability, at least he would be a Taoist master of Yuanying stage. Why would he need to play any tricks? Wouldn't it be fine if he just directly used his sword to cut down everyone? However, the fact had happened in front of him, so he couldn't deny it. The elder fully operated the grand array, trying to suppress the rotation of the feng shui vein. However, at this time he was stunned to find that the feng shui vein of the Grand Cloud Mountain seemed to be much wider than he imagined. Moreover, in addition to the feng shui vein, inside and outside the full moon valley, all living beings were driven by the power of this step and began to silently respond to Shaoqi's reincarnation scripture. And for the Beast Master School cultivators, it was as if thousands of words were ringing in their ears. The grass and trees around them seemed to have a spiritual nature. Under the leadership of Shaoqi and the Tool Spirit, they chanted the scripture in unison. Some voices were as tender as a child, some as heroic as a strong man, some as gentle as a woman, and some as vicissitudes of life like an old man. These thousands of voices, each with their own different yearning, but without exception, they were all speaking with sincerity about their resistance to death and their desire to live. Living beings wish? The King Pill Elder was even more horrified. According to the legend, only a person with great virtue and great power could make a great wish and receive the response of thousands of living beings. Although this Zen Master Guru's skill was not weak, he was still far from the realm of great virtue and great virtue. In the end, could it be Wang Lu's doing? Unfortunately, it was already too late to think about it further. Under the response of the living beings in the full moon valley, Shaoqi's Zen light gradually disintegrated the Yin wind barrier of the grand array, and with her as the core she opened up a pure land of rebirth. As the Yin wind blew, the resentful spirits dissipated, leaving only a wisp of breeze. The number of ghosts and malicious spirits gathered by the grand array was decreasing at an alarming rate, and the grand array was on the verge of collapse. How could this be? In the full moon valley, the remaining King Pill elders looked at each other and immediately returned to their respective positions. They began to join forces to maintain the grand array. More than 10 spirit beasts roared and rushed to one place, trying to interrupt Shaoqi's soul rebirth scripture. These spirit beasts were comparable to the strength of the King Pill elders. At this time they attacked with all their strength and their power was even more astonishing. However, in the blink of an eye, more than 10 explosive sounds were heard one after another. The spirit beasts uttered painful groans and screams as they were bounced back by an absolute force. Wang Lu propped up his non-phase sword defense and slowly spat out a mouthful of foul air with a strong smell of blood. Behind him, Lu Li was clinging to his back, both of her hands holding his arm, and the two of them were almost as one. Just now, when he launched his non-phase sword, Lu Li simultaneously launched her brilliant sword heart, merging the pure sword intent with Wang Lu's non-phase sword art. Before those spirit beasts pounced on them, they released thousands of sharp sword intents, using offense as defense, forcing the opposite side to retreat a bit at the last moment, greatly reducing their impact. Of course, even if there were some who were not afraid of death and charged at the sword intent of the brilliant sword heart, their strength would be reduced a lot. Therefore, even if more than 10 spirit beasts joined forces, they still could not break the non-phase sword defense. Wang Lu's non-phase method has never been afraid of group fight. The combined force of more than 10 spirit beasts was actually not much more threatening than a single spirit beast. At this time his defense had reached level 9 Shudan plus 24, which was equivalent to the peak of King Pill stage. And with the help of Lu Li his defense had gone even further, almost approaching the level of Yuanying stage. Unless there was a true Yuanying stage's full power output, otherwise no one would be able to break his non-phase sword defense. More than 10 spirit beasts continued to attack. Admittedly, Wang Lu was somewhat in a difficult situation, and he had no time to use his nameless sword to rebound the damage. However, as time went by, Shaoqi's reincarnation Pure Land continued to expand under the suppression of the 5 King Pill elders, which seemed to be about to break through the lock termination array. A bunch of waste. On the Crown Cloud Peak, Tiger King finally could not hold back and issued a soul-stirring roar. How sharp was the eyesight of a Taoist master of Yuanying stage. At a glance, he could see that the situation in the Full Moon Valley had gone out of control, and a higher-level person had to come forward. And who else but him could there be a higher-level person? Although the demon wolf in his hand has not been completely dealt with, and the contract imprint had only broken through the periphery at this time, he still had no time to deal with it. However, for a Yuanying stage cultivator, this situation was not difficult to deal with. If the avatar couldn't do it, then he would use the avatar. A purple-red shadow broke out from Tiger King's giant body and flew above the full moon valley. That shadow looked like a smaller version of Tiger King himself. Its surface was covered with purple and red, and there was brilliance flowing inside. Many people exclaimed, "Nascent soul has left its body." When a cultivator reached Yuanying stage, it was like having a second life. Not only in the face of a life and death crisis, a cultivator could abandon their body, let their nascent soul fly away, and then seize another body to be reborn. When needed, they could also take the initiative to separate their nascent soul and use it as an avatar. A single nascent soul, lacking the protection of its body, would appear particularly fragile. However, a cultivator's nascent soul almost had all of his magical power and magical ability. After Tiger King separated his nascent soul, he arrived above the full moon valley and suppressed it with his absolute power. The full power of a Yuanying stage cultivator was on a completely different level. Shao-Chi's reincarnation Pure Land was immediately swept back, and his Zen light was compressed by the purple-red light, leaving only a mass of 10 meters in radius. Wang Lu's non-phase sword defense also violently trembled, and black blood overflowed from his mouth and nose. Even with the help of Lu Li, the two of them still could not contend against the pressure of a Yuanying stage. The gap between a Yuanying stage and a real Yuanying stage was as big as an insurmountable gap. Not to mention that Tiger King's nascent soul directly stood at the eye of the 10,000 spirit lock termination array, which increased its power a bit. In the face of absolute power, your little tricks are meaningless. Tiger King's nascent soul issued a cold sneer in the air. "Try to squeeze out every bit of your potential so that I can play a bit longer," Tiger King said as he increased the magical power output of his nascent soul. In the full moon valley, it was as if the vault of heaven had sunk. Under the heavy pressure, Wang Lu's sword defense shrank inward, teetering on the verge of collapse. And in the middle of the non-phase sword defense, Shao-Chi had stopped reciting the Reincarnation Sutra and retrieved the monk's staff spirit. In the face of this level of crisis, she, as his avatar, was powerless. The woman looked up at the sky and sighed with emotion. "Absolute strength. Tiger King Lei Zhen, your reputation is well deserved." As the great elder of the Beast Master School Division, in many people's impression, Tiger King was just an ordinary Yuanying stage cultivator. Only when he joined hands with his spirit beast, Winged Tiger, did he have above-average strength. However, now it seemed that this Yuanying stage cultivator with deep accumulation actually hid a lot of his strength. Relying solely on his nascent soul, it was enough to contend against an ordinary 8th-level Yuanying stage cultivator. Therefore, when he boasted about his absolute strength, people really couldn't laugh. Of course, Wang Lu could also laugh at any time. Well-deserved reputation? It won't be long before he'll be immortal. Absolute strength? Ha, I'll let you see what is called absolute strength. As soon as his voice fell, a long horn sound echoed in the distance. At the top of a mountain more than 10 miles away from the full moon valley, Catgirl Ling Yen put down the horn that was personally given to her by Wang Lu. Just now, the dull horn sound almost deafened her cat ears. She could clearly perceive the situation in the full moon valley, especially Tiger King Lei Zhen's bloodthirsty magical power fluctuation, which made her hair stand on end. The cat girl was very clear about the crisis that Wang Lu and the others were facing at this time. However, she couldn't understand why Wang Lu previously told her that once she found Tiger King's nascent soul, she must blow this horn. After a moment, the aura around her body changed. The cat girl was startled, and then she stared at the night sky. In the mountain forest, thousands of faint lights lit up. Balls that were shining with all kinds of colors jumped out from the forest, between the rocks, and from the stream. At first, they were slow, but then they were pulled by an invisible force and accelerated little by little. Very soon, they turned into shooting stars and flew into the sky. Looking at the vision around her, the cat girl was keenly aware that those were the spirits of all living things in the mountains. All living things had spirits, and at this time, it was the manifestation of the spirits of all living things. The entire Grand Cloud Mountain was awakened by the long horn sound just now. The spirits of all living things in the mountains converged and flew toward one place. That was the direction of the full moon valley. The so-called absolute strength, in my opinion, is like a subtraction problem. Under the heavy pressure, Wang Lu further shrank his sword defense. The The 3-foot sword defense was now less than 3 inches, and it was on the verge of collapse. However, he was still indifferent and unhurriedly explained his understanding of absolute strength. First of all, put out the opponent's strength in full detail. How many yuanying, how many king pill, how many shudan. Then put out our strength and then begin to subtract. For each of our moves, how much of the opponent's strength can be deducted from each of our characters is calculated one by one. For example, Quan Zhuhua can deduct at least 2 of the opponent's king pill. And Shaoqi, you're reborn in the Pure Land, can at least deduct 3 to 4 of the opponent's king pill. Lu Li and I join hands to wield our swords, which is enough to deduct all of the opponent's minions. Like this calculation in this subtraction problem, the side with the larger number has the absolute strength. And for me, in the last step of this subtraction problem, as long as I reduce the opponent's nascent soul to the point that it has to leave its body, then I win. Wang Lu unhurriedly said. Although more and more blood gushed out from his mouth and nose, his posture appeared to be more calm. And according to my calculation, even if every step of this battle is not smooth, Quan Zhuhua's real body is recognized, Shaoqi's reborn in the Pure Land is difficult to contend against the 10,000 spirit lock termination, and Beast Master School still has other hidden cards. As long as it's within a basic reasonable range, I can find a way to subtract the problem to the step that I want. In the Full Moon Valley, Wang Lu's dull voice was particularly grating. However, although there were many people present, no one could stop him. Because everyone saw that within the radius of 500 miles around the Grand Cloud Mountain, the spirits of all living things had risen, and the spirits of all living things had converged into a torrential wave. This force was so powerful. Although the scattered spirits of all living things had too many flaws such as rough, scattered, unsystematic and lacking in organization, but there were enough of them and they were strong enough. Wherever the wave passed, no force could resist it. Tiger King's nascent soul crazily twisted, trying to escape in the air. However, just now, it had locked itself in the 10,000 spirit array's eye. Although it had been temporarily strengthened, and there was also a chilly wind barrier to protect its nascent soul, at this time, it was like spinning a cocoon around itself. Not to mention that when the spirits of all living things converged, the surrounding spiritual energy would surge. Without the protection of the array, the fragile nascent soul would immediately be blown away by the wind and rain. Tiger King was simply in a dilemma. Tiger King only felt that time seemed to have stopped, and every breath had become incomparably long. Only Wang Lu's indifferent voice could be heard, unhurriedly and unhurriedly. Very strange, why can I command the spirits of all living things on the Grand Cloud Mountain? 3 days ago, the mountain spirit entrusted her daughter to me. As the guardian of the next mountain spirit, not only do I have the power to command the mountain spirit, but before its wisdom matures, I am also the regent of the Grand Cloud Mountain. Royal power is not omnipotent, but it is still possible to launch a war on the Grand Cloud Mountain. Fortunately, I have advanced to the Shudan stage so I can refine the horn with my primordial spirit imprint. Tiger King, your cultivation base is profound, reaching the Yuanying stage, and your subordinates are as many as the clouds. You are much stronger than the few of us combined, but compared to the spirits of all living things on the Grand Cloud Mountain, what do you count for? If your nascent soul and body were not separated, perhaps I would not have a good way to deal with you. But now that you have stepped into the gate of death, in the face of absolute strength, only death awaits you. This move is actually not that big of a deal. Using the spirits of all living things to forcefully charge forward, it can be said to injure 1,000 enemies while injuring oneself 10,000. The Grand Cloud Fairy is too gentle and kind. In any case, she could not bear to see her people suffer such a sacrifice. Therefore, she could only connive at your evil deeds here. But I am different. I am neither gentle nor kind. I believe that short pain is better than long pain. I would rather have the Grand Cloud Mountain cut off one of its own fingers today to thoroughly expel you, this group of viruses and bacteria. Tiger King, the night wind of the Grand Cloud Mountain is cold. Your nascent soul is running around naked, so I am afraid you cannot bear it. Please obediently go to sleep. While speaking, millions of specks of light converged in one place, and the purple-red nascent soul was immediately submerged by this wave, no longer able to emit even the slightest bit of light. Chapter 206. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes and arrangements seemed insignificant. For the 15th day of the 7th month, the Beast Master School had been preparing for a whole year. Perhaps most of these cultivators who spent all their time with spirit beasts had a rough and straightforward character and were not good at scheming, but their efforts in the Crown Cloud Peak and the Full Moon Valley were also obvious to all. Unfortunately, all of this, after the resuscitation of the spirit of all living things, seemed incomparably small. There was a saying in the immortal cultivation world that man could conquer heaven, but only those who had really seen the power of heaven could understand how ridiculous this was. When hundreds of millions of light spots converged into a sea, it was as if the wrath of heaven had descended. The vast sea of light engulfed everything in the full moon valley. Everyone's mind was blank, as if it had been washed away, unable to think about anything. The direct impact of the spirit of all living things was not strong to the entity. If Tiger King's spirit and body were united, he could completely rely on his powerful body to protect himself. However, his Yuanying had left his body, which was tantamount to walking on the road to death. The impact was only for a moment, but it seemed like a long time had passed. After the momentary collision, hundreds of millions of light spots melted in the golden light of the Emperor Essence. Tiger King's purple-red Yuanying disappeared without a trace. The 10,000 spirit lock termination array in the full moon valley fell apart, and the souls of tens of thousands of spirit dogs also entered the cycle of reincarnation under the impact and washing. Without Tiger King, without the 10,000 spirit lock termination array, the Emperor Essence sprinkled all over the Grand Cloud Mountain, and no one could restrain or stop it. However, the moon spirit did not appear in other places. The pure white spirit dog stood silently beside Wang Lu, under the protection of the non-phase sword defense, accepting the baptism of the pure essence of the moonlight. There were hundreds of people in the Beast Master School, but no one dared to come forward to stop it. Although those King Pill elders, as well as the astonishingly powerful spirit beasts, still had the power to fight again, they did not have the will to fight again. Looking at the smiling Wang Lu standing in the valley, the Beast Master School cultivators only felt a bone-chilling coldness from the bottom of their hearts. Although he looked like he had just recovered from a serious injury, and the corner of his mouth had not been wiped clean, but after witnessing the earth-shattering spirit of all living things, who could guarantee that he did not have more cards in his hand? And when Tiger King disappeared, who else had the courage to come forward and carry the battle flag? Time passed slowly. The Beast Master School cultivators gathered near the Crown Cloud Peak, and then watched as Wang Lu and the others recuperated and recovered in the full moon valley. They watched as the immortal beast moon spirit, which they had coveted for a long time, transformed bit by bit under the baptism of the Emperor Essence. They even watched as the giant wolf broke free from the shackles, took away the spiritual treasure beast collar, and ran into the full moon valley. Under the protection of Wang Lu's sword defense, the situation was slipping into the abyss step by step. The night of July 15th was longer than anyone had expected. After an unknown amount of time, the golden moonlight in the sky seemed to have slightly dimmed. The spirit of the Beast Master School cultivators shook, thinking that this painful torture had come to an end. However, a moment later they discovered that it was not the golden light in the sky that dimmed, but the light in the full moon valley had become more intense. The immortal beast moon spirit had already absorbed enough Emperor essence and entered the real transformation stage. The specific process of the immortal beast's transformation was a very valuable observation for many people. Unfortunately, the moon spirit that had absorbed the Emperor essence had covered its body in a thick light, as if it was turning into a cocoon. Wang Lu and the others silently guarded the moon spirit's side. It should end here, right? For a time, even Wang Lu felt a trace of exhaustion. Things had indeed ended here, for most people. However, in the eyes of a few people, things had just begun. The place where things happened was on the Crown Cloud Peak. However, it was not on the Crown Cloud Peak but inside the mountain in a dark and deep place. Phew. In the dark secret room there was a weak but rapid gasping sound. The sound was filled with great fear and panic, as if it had just escaped from a life-and-death situation. However, the sound soon stabilized and a moment later the secret room lit up with a light. It reflected the figure of a strong man. The man's whole body was coiled with muscles, and on his neck was a tiger's head. His thick palm was burning with the light of thunder and fire. It was the Tiger King Lei Zhen who should have perished. Just now, Wang Lu used the power of the acting mountain spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain to activate the spirits of all living things. He did not hesitate to break into the 10,000 spirit lock termination array. The layers of defensive spells that Lei Zhen had set up collapsed in an instant. The nascent soul spells and abilities were also weak and powerless under the waves. However, a nascent soul cultivator was still a nascent soul cultivator. Their methods were far more profound than those of ordinary cultivators. Moreover, Tiger King Lei Zhen's temperament was violent and rough, but he was also meticulous. Before the great event of the 15th of July, he had quietly prepared a backup plan. He had set up a small nascent soul receiving array in the secret room of the Crown Cloud Peak. Of course, in the wave of anger of the spirits of all living things, a small array was far from enough to save one's life. Therefore, Tiger King did not hesitate to sacrifice his two natal spirit beasts, the loyal and devoted winged tiger, as well as the shadow tiger that had been hidden for more than 10 years. He used them as a substitute to fight for a moment of respite. Even so, the price he paid was still painful. His nascent soul was seriously injured. In order to fuse his body with the seriously injured nascent soul, he also consumed a lot of his flesh and blood essence. At this time, Tiger King only felt an unprecedented weakness. Although his nascent soul stage was still there, and the purple-red little person in his broken jade mansion was still breathing, but what supported all of this had become extremely fragile. However, as long as there's life, there's always a chance to make a comeback. Tiger King Lei Zhen had experienced countless storms in his life. Although this hurdle was difficult, in the end he had passed it. Next, he had to rest in this secret room for a few days. After he had restored some of his strength, he would go out of the Crown Cloud Peak to clean up the mess. And at that time, the elders from the Southern Heaven region should have arrived. Although he was quite unhappy with many of the great elders from the Beastmaster School when he wanted to separate from the family, he was, after all, the great elder of the Beastmaster School. The school would not sit idly by and watch a nascent soul cultivator fall. At that time, as long as he could lower his head, 100 years later, he would still be able to establish a foundation. However, just as he was thinking, a burst of footsteps came from outside the secret room. Tiger King's heart jumped. This secret room was his life-saving card, his real last resort. He had never mentioned it to anyone. Moreover, this place was located in the middle of the Crown Cloud Peak, so who would come here at this time? The light from the thunder and fire in his palm became a bit brighter, illuminating the figure of a person. Tiger King's eyes suddenly became sharper, and the muscles all over his body tightened up. "Xia, is that you?" The person who came was Xia. This King Pill elder, who not long ago had a tender and sweet relationship with Tiger King, still had his signature smile hanging on his face. Moreover, that smile was quite sincere, as if he had just received joy and moisture. "It's me, don't you welcome me?" Normally, seeing Xia showing such an expression, Tiger King would naturally welcome him. However, at this moment Tiger King was not happy at all. "How did you know about this place? I've never told you about it." Xia shrugged. "That's right. Even if you don't mention it to the person closest to you as the person closest to you, there are some things that you don't need to say out loud. You can hide it from others by arranging a life-saving array in the Crown Cloud Peak, but you can't hide it from me." "Hehe, you really are smart." Tiger King coldly smiled. "However, if you're smart enough, you should know that there are some things that not knowing is better than knowing. If you turn around now, I can pretend that nothing happened." Xia laughed. "You've always been coarse, but you're also meticulous. You're not more stupid than others, so why bother deceiving yourself? Since I'm here, can't you guess what I'm going to do?" "That won't do you any good." Xia shook his head. "No good? Then you really don't know me." With that, he took a step in front of Tiger King, extended his slender arm, and pressed it on the center of Tiger King's forehead. The next moment, Tiger King felt an astonishing suction force coming from the center of his forehead. His head buzzed from this suction force and his brain seemed to be boiling. What made him even more horrified was that the broken nascent soul in his jade mansion seemed to have been eroded and began to disintegrate further. Moreover, it was pulled out of his jade mansion. "What do you want to do?" "Hee, can't you guess what I want to do? My aptitude in immortal cultivation is not good. My root bone and opportunity are mediocre. The cultivation method given to me by the sect can't be of any use. Because of this, I'm ridiculed as an incompetent waste. However, I'm afraid no one would think that I have the skill of a dove occupying a magpie's nest. Moreover, for today I've been preparing for more than 10 years. Tiger King coldly said, "You want to seize my nascent soul and body?" "Correct. Henceforth I am Tiger King Lei Zhen, with excellent immortal cultivation aptitude, illustrious sect prestige and boundless future." While speaking, Xia's smile became more brilliant, and the suction force from his palm also became stronger. It seemed like Tiger King's nascent soul was about to be dragged out from his jade mansion. Tiger King was silent for a moment, and then he opened his mouth with a gloomy voice. "It's useless." "Useless? If you don't try, how do you know it's useless?" "Yes, with my King Pill stage, it's somewhat difficult to inherit your nascent soul's mantle, but—" "No, I don't mean that," Tiger King said, his voice becoming more and more steady. "Even if you take away everything from me, you can't become me. In immortal cultivation, everyone's path is unique. Even if there are 3,000 paths, in the end what we cultivate is ourselves. If you wholeheartedly focus on external things hoping to take this shortcut, it will only harm yourself. Wuxia sneered. Tiger King said, I can understand your, shut up. Speaking of understanding, Wuxia suddenly became excited. Understand? That's ridiculous. I've been cultivating for more than 100 years, and I've been bitterly exploring the bottleneck without being able to move forward. I can only take the unconventional path, even by hook or by crook. This kind of feeling of having no way to go, when have you ever felt it? When those people in the sect laughed at me for selling my ass and licking your toes, when have you ever felt that kind of humiliation? What qualifications do you have to talk about understanding? With that, the suction force increased again. Tiger King was finally unable to resist. His purple-red nascent soul was pulled out and fell into Wuxia's palm. Wuxia's eyes were full of greed as he carefully played with this scarred nascent soul. It's really a good thing. If it's a normal cultivation method, I'm afraid I would never be able to cultivate such a nascent soul. No wonder you always boast in my ear that no matter what you want, you're still reluctant to part with this thing. Upon hearing this, Tiger King was stunned. A moment later he finally laughed wildly. Wuxia, oh Wuxia, since you've said it like this I won't say any more. Whatever you want, just take it from me. I've suffered this calamity, so it's difficult for me to shelter you from the wind and rain. Thus, my cultivation base, my body, my method, and everything else are all here for you to take as you please. I just hope that in the future, you won't regret today's arrogance. Regret? How could I regret? This is my only chance. If I can't grasp it, I'll regret it. However, looking at what you've done for me in the past few years, I'll give you a chance to live. With that, Wuxia laughed several times and closed his palm. Tiger King's nascent soul was suddenly extinguished, but Wuxia's eyes emitted a purple-red light. After a while, Wuxia's eyes dimmed, and his whole body lost its vitality, motionless. However, Tiger King's body slightly trembled. He opened his eyes, which were suffused with a faint light. What a powerful force. Is this the world of Yuanying stage cultivators? Obviously seriously injured and dying, yet it's more powerful than when I'm healthy. Tiger King lightly said. His voice was a bit weird. Obviously he was still not used to his newly mastered power. In front of him, Wuxia also moved a bit. When he opened his mouth, his voice sounded old and weak. Congratulations, you finally got what you wanted. Hee, got what I wanted? This can't be considered as getting what I wanted. There's one more thing that if I don't do it, it can't be called perfect. With that, the burly giant suddenly threw the thin man to the ground and tore off his pants. You. Lesion, oh Lesion, in your whole life you've been stabbing people, but this is the first time you've been stabbed. Now I'll let you feel what I've been through in the past decades. Tell me, are you happy? Amidst his laughter, his burly body began to slowly sway. So this is how Tiger King feels, so that's how it is. Aha, it's really refreshing, really refreshing. With the acceleration of his movement, Tiger King's voice became more and more excited. However, a moment later, his laughter came to an abrupt end, because the body below him was actually stiff and motionless. When he stretched out his hand, it had already bitten its tongue and committed suicide. Humph, I thought you're a man, but you can't even stand a blow, really ridiculous. The burly man stood up in disappointment and kicked the body away without any reluctance. Now let me clean up the mess for you. Humph, I wonder if that immortal beast has transformed yet? After the burly man's figure left the secret chamber, there seemed to be a smile hanging on the face of the curled-up corpse. Chapter 207. When Wuxia reappeared on the Crown Cloud Peak with the identity of Tiger King, less than half a day had passed. The once-in-60 years phenomenon of Emperor Molasses has just ended. The golden light gradually dissipated, and the early morning sun hung on the horizon. On the Crown Cloud Peak, hundreds of Beast Master School disciples and 10 King Pill elders gathered together. Regarding the current situation, they couldn't come to a consensus and quarreled endlessly. Elder Gongyang, what should we do now? Several disciples surrounded an elder. Their eagerness and hesitation were clearly expressed in their words. This elder Gongyang was usually deeply trusted by Tiger King. Except for Wuxia, that kind of special case, he could be regarded as the second in command here. Now that the Beast Master School division suffered a major setback, naturally someone would turn to him for help. Unfortunately, Elder Gongyang was also too busy to take care of himself. When he was presiding over the Beast Collar, he was sneak attacked by Fenrir, and the King Pill was almost broken into two halves. At this time he didn't have enough time to adjust his breathing, So how could he stabilize the morale of the troops and point the way forward for the confused disciples? Although the several elders who were not injured were full of vigor, they had different opinions. They just kept on quarreling, but no one could come up with a practical and effective solution. If you ask me, we should gather everyone's power to fight him again. I don't believe he can still launch the spirit of all living things. Previously he was suppressed by Great Elder's nascent soul, so his injury is not light. Moreover, he has no time to heal, so how could he still have any fighting power? If you have the ability, then do it yourself. Since you think he has no fighting power, then what are you, a dignified high-level King Pill Elder, waiting for? The opponent is only in Shudan stage, you should be able to take him down in 2 or 3 moves. Surnamed Lu, are you scared? I'm just smarter than you. The other side dared to let the immortal beast transform in front of us, so obviously he has enough weight in his card. How could we only look at his surface cultivation? Even Great Elder was killed by him. Do you think you're more brilliant than Great Elder? *CKU Liangyu. The Great Elder has always been good to you. After he died, you didn't even think about avenging him. Instead, you just want to find an excuse to shrink your balls. Do you even deserve to call yourself a man? It is precisely because the head elder is dead that we have to be even more careful. We have to preserve the strength of the beast taming school. You two don't have to fight amongst yourselves. If the head elder, a gold core realm elder, spoke halfway and abruptly stopped, because in his line of sight, an inconceivable figure appeared. Hey, who do you think died? The noise in the hall quieted down in an instant. Several hundred pairs of bewildered eyes turned towards one direction, locking onto the tall and sturdy man, locking onto the tiger's head. Great Elder? Lord Tiger King? Brother Leijin. In a split second, countless cries of surprise blended together. Everyone watched in disbelief as the person who should have been dead appeared in front of them. Even though they could see that he was weak and injured at this moment, his unique mana fluctuation ignited the confidence in everyone's hearts. Sure enough, you're still alive. I knew you wouldn't die so easily. One of the elders sighed with emotion. His face was practically covered with tears. Just now, several hundred people were quarreling in the hall. Each voice was louder than the last, and even the sand and stones rustled down. It was not because they were excited to fight, but because they were using this method to cover up the panic in their hearts. Gong Yang, Liang Yu, and the other elders could not hold the scene. The disciples were at a loss, and the rest of the King Pill elders each had their own plans. Some of them even had the idea of surrendering to the young Shudan. Without the stabilizing force to suppress the situation, the several hundred people of the beast taming school would fall apart. You bunch of waste. Compared to the past, this long-lost scolding voice was a bit less domineering, but to everyone's ears, it was like the sound of nature. They only felt a surge of warmth in their hearts, and they no longer felt indecisive and uneasy. This was the role of the Great Elder Tiger King Leijin. With just one sentence, he could end everyone's dispute and stabilize the morale of the army. Great Elder, what should we do next? Elder Gong Yang struggled to raise his breath and asked the question that was in everyone's heart. Do you still need to ask me? Have you forgotten the rules of the beast taming school? Someone came to our door and ruined our painstaking efforts for more than a year. They snatched the immortal beast moon spirit and injured many disciples and spirit beasts. Even I was ruthlessly tricked by them. Do you think we can just let it go? Tiger King said and then sneered. His laughter was filled with killing intent. A tooth for a tooth, double it. Everyone was both shocked and gratified. Sure enough, it was the Tiger King, the Great Elder who had a rough character but could shelter people from wind and rain at any time. However, although they were gratified, they could not relax their vigilance. Elder Liang Yu, who had always been cautious, reminded, Sir Tiger King, those people have been unscrupulously standing in the full moon valley all night. Although it may be a deliberate decoy, they most likely have a particularly powerful card up their sleeves. You must be careful. Careful. It's ridiculous. My yuanying had left my body, so I was reckless. The so-called careful is just an excuse for you to find for your own cowardice. With that, Tiger King no longer paid attention to the hesitation of the elders and disciples. He turned around and walked toward the direction of the full moon valley. People looked at the gradually fading back of Tiger King. Although they were inevitably embarrassed when they were reprimanded for cowardice, their fighting spirit that had long been extinguished has been rekindled. As long as the Great Elder Tiger King was there, they would certainly be invincible. However, no one could see that the Great Elder, who was walking in the front, had an irrepressible smile on his face. Sure enough, no one could see it. Some of the elders and disciples in the lobby had been with Tiger King for decades, Yet none of them were able to find out that the content of the same body has been completely changed. Of course, from another point of view, a Xia who had completely abandoned his own king pill and body, after taking away Tiger King's body and Yuanying, was not much different from his original self. For this day, a Xia had been preparing for more than 10 years. Tiger King's character has long been deeply imprinted in his mind, even the most detailed parts were not missed. When he was determined to play the role of Tiger King, he was really no different from his original self. No, compared to his original self who did everything smoothly and didn't know the sinister side of human nature, a Xia who was well versed in the way of survival, was confident that he could do better. For example, in the present situation, if it were the original Tiger King, he would probably have to swallow his anger, or even perish together with the opponent. However, he was different. In his hand, he held 2 cards that were enough to determine the outcome of the battle. After taking over the role of Tiger King, he would use these 2 cards to create a brilliant victory as the prelude. The next moment, he forcibly extracted the magical power from his Yuanying in his Jade Mansion, which turned into a pair of cloud-riding wings, and then flew toward the Full Moon Valley. In the Full Moon Valley, the transformation of the immortal beast moon spirit has reached the final moment. The golden cocoon of light flickered, and with the alternating light and dark, it expanded and contracted, like a beating heart. A brand new breath of life was brewing inside the cocoon of light. Although it has yet to complete the crucial step of breaking out of the cocoon, the surging energy contained within it was still alarming. It was indeed worthy to be called an immortal beast. In the legend, as long as it was idle and waited for death, it would have the strength comparable to a true immortal in its mature stage. Compared to it, even the 2 peerless geniuses Wang Lu and Lu Li seemed slightly overshadowed. Just waiting for it to break out of the cocoon, Wang Lu had already prepared the heavenly talisman. Once the moon spirit transformed, he would immediately launch the heavenly talisman to bring the moon spirit back to the mountain. Compared to the immortal beast, the value of this mere heavenly talisman was not worth mentioning. As for whether the moon spirit was willing or not, as its guardian, he could completely ignore it. Of course, before launching the heavenly talisman, he still had to do the necessary superficial work. His sword of Mount Kuan was still slanted forward, and his magical power output was never interrupted. This non-phase sword defense had been maintained for most of the night, showing the endurance of his non-phase method. Beside him, Lu Li also didn't slack off. Her brilliant sword heart's clear physique allowed her to obtain great benefits from the Emperor essence. Her just-reached Shudan stage and her slightly unstable primordial spirit was once again tempered, making it even more marvelous. Lu Li integrated her brilliant sword heart into her non-phase sword defense, and her magical power and sword intent also maintained for most of the night, yet she didn't seem tired at all. In addition, dog-meat gluttonous master Shao Qi, Quan Zhuhua and cat girl Ling Yan all surrounded the cocoon of light, each on guard. This group of people assumed the posture of ready to fight at any time, which instead ensured their safety for most of the night. However, this was the end of their peaceful life. In the sky above the Full Moon Valley, a dense mass of people appeared. Under the leadership of Tiger King, the cultivators of the Beastmaster School Division came out in full force, assuming the posture of fighting to the death, full of fighting intent. When they saw that tiger head elder, everyone was taken aback. Even Wang Lu curiously asked, "Do you believe in Brother Chun?" It wasn't that they didn't expect that the other party might not be dead, but after narrowly escaping death just now, he couldn't wait to die again, which made people have to doubt the problem. Tiger King was lucky enough to escape, but he was seriously injured and had no power to fight again. Anyone could see this. However, at this time he stood at the front of the team with quite a bit of style of courting death. However, before Wang Lu could say anything, Tiger King's voice reverberated in the valley. "You didn't expect me to come back, did you? This is the end of your mystifying tricks." Upon hearing this, Wang Lu didn't want to say anything. "Want to fight to the death? Fine, then let's fight." Although his injury had healed and his magical power, energy and primordial spirit were all at their peak, he felt an unprecedented fatigue. From the beginning to the end, he had been the one planning, executing and shouldering the burden of this battle. He had shouldered all the burdens by himself, and the pressure was far greater than anyone could imagine. This battle had gone on for too long and it was time to put an end to it. Although the other party had the advantage in numbers, the most threatening nascent soul cultivator had been crippled. Now, apart from standing at the front as a spiritual leader, he could only play the role of a cheerleader when the battle started. The ones who could actually fight were the King Pill Elders and the Spirit Beast. However, as long as he and Little Yoli could cooperate well, An opponent of the king pill level was no big deal. Even if he couldn't beat them, couldn't he just hold on? As long as he held on until the moon spirit finished its transformation, the heavenly talisman would flash and leave, and what could they do to him? However, just as Wang Lu was about to raise his sword to face the final battle, an ominous feeling flashed in his heart. When he raised his head, his eyes met Tiger King's. However, in those purplish-red eyes, a completely different look flashed. That wasn't the real Tiger King. Wang Lu's intuition told him so. However, no matter who he is, it's all the same anyway, Wang Lu said tiredly. The next moment he read a hint of mockery in the other party's eyes. You finally fell into my trap. Wang Lu seemed to hear the other party's ridicule. Subconsciously he turned around and saw Lu Li beside him. Just behind Lu Li, the cat girl Ling Yan silently approached him. With half bewilderment and half panic, she deeply pierced the strangely shaped dagger in her hand into Lu Li's back. Chapter 208. No matter how professional an adventurer was, there would always be a time when he failed. In this world there was no omniscient and omnipotent God, only conscientious and diligent cultivators. In a trance, these two sentences emerged in Wang Lu's mind. He couldn't remember where he saw it, but for a long time Wang Lu regarded it as his own code of conduct. He often used unconventional moves, often used risky moves, and often used God's unfolding method to refresh other people's worldview. However, as far as he was concerned, he was very serious about everything, and would never fight a battle that he was not sure of. Including this time's fight in the Full Moon Valley, in addition to confirming his absolute strength through the subtraction problem, even when Tiger King withdrew and the general situation was already set, Wang Lu still maintained enough vigilance. This kind of full concentration was the key to his success. However, even a wise man would make a mistake. On the eve of a great victory, the taut bowstring slightly loosened, revealing an insignificant but fatal flaw. He should have thought of it. If there was anyone worthy of his special attention in this Full Moon Valley battle, it would be the Yuanying stage Tiger King, Lei Zhen, who was ranked first. Closely following him was not the number 2 figure of the division, Elder Gong Yang, nor was it Tiger King's right-hand man but a Xia. Wang Lu had never underestimated the destructive power of that abnormal cultivator. A Xia was indeed a waste in the immortal cultivation path, and his ability to play tricks was not as good as Wang Lu, a professional adventurer. However, in a careful layout he was likely to become an unpredictable variable. Because he was abnormal enough, twisted enough, and cruel enough. In fact, when Wang Lu summoned the spirits of all living things to defeat Tiger King, he spent a lot of time to figure out a Xia's movement. He didn't think that a Xia would be silent from the beginning to the end. In such a big scene he would certainly be eager to join in, but he never saw a Xia appear. Perhaps this was indeed Wang Lu's lack of luck. If a Xia could complete the possession a few moments earlier, suppress his injury, and come out from the belly of the crown cloud peak to clean up the situation, perhaps he would have caught up with Wang Lu's vigilance. At that time, as long as Wang Lu found an anomaly and intuitively guessed a Xia's identity, he would immediately think that when a Xia appeared, the cat girl would immediately become the biggest unstable factor. Wang Lu did not doubt the sincerity of the cat girl, nor did he doubt Lu Li's sword intent. However, he also did not doubt a Xia's control over his slave. Ling Yan had been trained by him for decades. How could it be so easy to get rid of a Xia's control? Perhaps the slave imprint could be isolated with the brilliant sword heart, but how could the shadow that had accumulated in the depths of the cat girl's heart for decades be so easily removed? Obeying to a Xia had become an instinct. When that instinct broke out, the line of defense formed by the brilliant sword heart would be the first to collapse. It was not that a Xia used any means to regain control of the cat girl, but rather the cat girl couldn't help but fall into the other party's control. If they didn't meet face to face, everything would be fine. However, once the two of them met face to face, the cat girl was likely to break out. Because of this, Wang Lu sent her to blow the horn before the decisive battle in the Full Moon Valley. Only when the overall situation was settled did he let her return with the horn. After all, the strength of the king pill level was worth using. This layout was already cautious enough, but unexpectedly there was still a flaw. When the cat girl helplessly stabbed the dagger into Lu Li's body, Wang Lu knew that the worst possibility had become a reality. The accumulation of excessive exhaustion in his brain was swept away in an instant. Although he couldn't stop all this in time, Wang Lu still responded with the fastest speed. He completely ignored the cat girl Ling Yan, and also ignored the suddenly seriously injured Lu Li. Instead he stepped forward and aimed at a Xia in the sky. The cat girl Ling Yan didn't mean to hurt people. After that blow she fell into confusion, but because of this even Lu Li didn't notice this sudden change. Quan Zuhua, after a moment of consternation, slowly recovered and bit off the cat girl's 2 hands. During this time the cat girl didn't respond at all. Before the decisive battle in the Full Moon Valley, Wang Lu had told Quan Zuhua that once the cat girl had a problem, the first thing to do was to take away her ability to move and leave her alive. The rest was not necessary. As for Lu Li's injury, it was indeed very serious but not immediately fatal. First, the cat girl's instinctive hesitation and confusion made it difficult for her to go all out. However, Lu Li was in a fighting state, so she was not defenseless. It was just that she was caught unprepared by the sudden change. She was good at attack but not good at defense. Secondly, Shaoqi's Zen cultivation was best at healing the wounded and dying. With her around, there was no need for Wang Lu to meddle in other people's business. Thirdly, from Xia's point of view, a living Lu Li was far more beneficial to him than a dead Lu Li. Before seeing the dark green dagger in the cat girl's hand, Wang Lu had speculated that the other party wouldn't directly seek to kill Lu Li, but would likely use poison, the kind that could bite the heart and rot the bones but was not immediately fatal. After Lu Li was poisoned, the other party could use the antidote in her hand to ask for a sky-high price. In this regard, there was only one correct response, which was what Wang Lu was doing now. He drew out the magical power from his jade mansion and turned it into a light body spell. With a step he flew toward the sky like a meteor straight toward Xia. To catch a thief, first catch the king. As long as he could catch Xia, anything would not be difficult to solve. Not to mention that Lu Li was seriously injured, the most taboo was a long delay and a dream would come. In normal times, this group of Beast Master School's miscellaneous troops would not enter Wang Lu's eyes. However, now that the cat girl had betrayed him, Quan Zuhua suppressed the cat girl, and Shaoqi was healing Lu Li, they almost had no fighting power. Even if he used his non-phase sword defense to prop up his defense, in front of so many King Pill elders, it would be inevitable that he would reveal a flaw. Not to mention there was still a Xia who he could not take lightly. Therefore, the correct approach was to turn the tables, preemptively strike to gain the initiative, and then take down the opponent's biggest variable. It was unknown what kind of mentality a Xia had, but he openly stood in the front of the team, creating an excellent condition for Wang Lu. Otherwise, if he were to hide in the encirclement of the King Pill elders, Wang Lu, who specialized in non-phase method, might not be able to easily get in front of him. Of course, although all of the above reasons were valid, there was only one thing that really drove Wang Lu to respond in the first instance: anger. When Lu Li fell beside him in a daze, Wang Lu, who always liked to put a lot of things in his mind, suddenly had his mind go blank. When he came back to his senses, his body had involuntarily taken a step forward, and his body had accumulated enough power to soar to the sky. His line of sight was blood red, as if he was in a sea of fire. His chest was also burning with pain from the nameless fire. In his mind, there seemed to be a swelling force colliding in all directions, as if it was about to explode. It had been many, many years since he experienced such pure anger. Even if he himself was injured, there wouldn't be too much emotional fluctuation. However, Lu Li was different. She was Wang Lu's reverse scale. This time, going north to Cloud Region was actually Wang Lu's task. However, Lu Li followed him all the way, always at his beck and call. Whatever he asked her to do, there was no discount. This kind of unreserved trust, at the same time, also meant a great responsibility. Wang Lu was her senior brother, so he had the responsibility to protect his junior sister. He specialized in defense, so he also had the ability to shoulder his own responsibility. It was precisely because Lu Li trusted Wang Lu that even when she entered the combat state and activated her brilliant sword heart, she didn't waste too much energy on self-protection. Because she believed that no matter what danger she encountered, her senior brother could help her block it. Unfortunately, Wang Lu made a mistake. Although it was only a trivial delay in reaction, it still led to a bad result, betraying his junior sister's trust. This fact was the biggest driving force for Wang Lu's action. Non-phase method didn't have the healing ability, and during the fight, Wang Lu also didn't have the healing instinct. Therefore, when anger filled his heart, his first reaction was to kill. In the blink of an eye, Wang Lu had already soared to the sky and arrived in front of Xia. His speed was so fast that many of the King Pill sect elders were surprised. Only Xia was still leisurely floating in mid-air, as if he didn't see the oncoming Wang Lu, and didn't see the burning anger in his eyes. "Stop pretending, you can't hurt me." Xia shook his head and smiled. His heart was overflowing with pride. Wang Lu's momentum seemed fierce, but in his eyes, it was tantamount to a cornered dog jumping over a wall. Because, How could you have the ability to hurt people, my master Wang Lu? Bus. Sure enough, Wang Lu's momentum came to an abrupt halt. The moment before he collided with Xia, the distance between them was less than 3 feet. Beside Xia, dozens of Beast Master School cultivators surrounded Wang Lu, but they weren't in a hurry to make their move. Seeing that the situation was settled, Xia smiled proudly. Do you wonder why I can recognize that you're not Yu Lu but Wang Lu? Do you wonder why I know that you're only good at defense but can't hurt people? After a pause, Xia carefully observed Wang Lu's reaction. Unfortunately, he didn't see any change on his face. However, it didn't matter. Xia forcibly suppressed his ecstasy and revealed the answer himself. Actually, I really want to ask you, a successor disciple of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. A few years ago you made such a big name for yourself, and your defensive method shocked everyone. Now, as long as you're knowledgeable, seeing a young cultivator with a low cultivation base but specializing in defense, you'll inevitably be associated with you. Of course, it wasn't as easy as it sounded. 9 regions was so big that talented cultivators and miraculous battle cases emerged one after another. Except for those professionals who sold information for a living, it was very difficult for ordinary people to grasp so many details. Young age, specializing in defense, able to challenge people with a higher cultivation base. This kind of person could be casually found in the thousands. Xia didn't determine the identity of the other party based on this. However, saying so was the best way to deal a blow to the other party's morale, making the other party feel that everything was under his control. His fighting spirit would turn pale, and then he would be at the mercy of others. Moreover, the fact was that Wang Lu was restricted by the Big Heart Demon Oath, so he couldn't use a mortal method to hurt people. Although he had a few flexible means, it was only when his side made the first move that he could rebound the damage. Would his side make the first move? Of course not, therefore. However, in the next moment, a fist heavily smashed onto his face, and all his thoughts were completely obliterated. The fist wasn't heavy, but the burning power of the fist actually burned his internal organs, causing him to spit out blood on the spot. What kind of fist is this? Raging fire fist? Burning heart fist? Or, no, how could he hurt me? He was restricted by the Big Heart Demon, how could he hurt me? What about the Big Heart Demon, why didn't he kill him? Since he violated the oath, he should die without a doubt. Why didn't he let him die? The next moment, Wang Lu's faint voice came into his ears. This is the injury you gave me and now I'm paying it back double. The second heavy punch fell on his face. Xia felt as if he was in a sea of fire. The injuries that his body had been suppressing almost burst out. While he was seriously injured, a light flashed in Xia's mind, and an inconceivable thought jumped out. Could it be that sadness is also an injury? Chapter 209. Whether sadness was part of the injury or not, Xia had no time to think about it. Purely in terms of damage, although Wang Lu's 2 punches were heavy, they were not fatal. What was fatal was the serious injury that was previously suppressed in his body, which was inherited from the original Tiger King. Although Xia's possession was successful with his King Pill level foundation, he couldn't really utilize the power of Yuanying stage. According to his speculation, without more than 10 years of cultivation, he couldn't even display half of his original strength. Of course, compared to his original body, it was still much stronger. Unfortunately, at least at this time he was seriously injured. Although he was in Yuanying stage, he couldn't do anything to Wang Lu, who only knew how to swing his fist. After being hit by the 2 punches on his face, Xia's injury broke out. His internal organs were burned, and his huge tiger head almost burst into tears as he staggered back. The Beast Master School elders around him were also shocked and quickly prepared to save him. Various magical power flashed one after another, which almost covered the dawn and shrouded the sky above the full moon valley. Xia turned pale with fright and almost cursed out loud. He hastily waved his hands to stop the stupid behavior of this group of people. Wang Lu was an expert in rebounding damage. These people went all out. Did they want to kill him? Right now, what Wang Lu hit him was only his inner emotion. However, if those dozens of spells fell down and were transmitted by the method of resonance, he would really die. From the beginning, Xia didn't expect to be able to defeat his opponent in a head-on confrontation. For the successor disciples from the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, skipping level challenge was a common occurrence. To deal with Wang Lu, he still had to use other means. Don't you want the antidote for Lu Li? This was Xia's trump card. The poisonous dagger in cat girl Ling Yan's hand was given to her by him. Naturally, only Xia himself had the antidote. As long as he threatened the other party with the antidote, he was not afraid that he would not comply. In fact, the more angry Wang Lu was, the more he cared about Lu Li. And the more he cared, the easier it was for him to yield. Unfortunately, Xia really didn't understand Wang Lu. "I don't want it." Bam. In Xia's endless consternation, the third heavy punch came. This time Xia was prepared. He immediately transferred his magical power to fly backward. However, unexpectedly, after being punched twice, his jade mansion was filled with raging flames, and his magical power could not be operated as he wished. He inherited Tiger King's nascent soul and body, and the wind followed the dragon and the tiger followed the wind followed the tiger. He almost instinctively used the wind technique. In a hurry, Xia managed to turn his head. Wang Lu's fist gently brushed past his cheek and immediately, his ferocious tiger head swelled up. At the same time, Xia felt that in his jade mansion, the purple-black Dao heart that had fused with Tiger King's Dao heart was ignited. In an instant, it was burned into a complete mess, and the purple-red Yuanying faintly showed signs of melting. Chin to say to him. Xia. Of to Lu. Xia a to the Xia was to say. To of Lu of. Do you think Zen Master Guru can save her? Only I can cure that poison. If you don't take the antidote within 15 minutes, you will die. Idiot. Wang Lu's voice was cold and full of ridicule. After 3 punches, the anger in his heart subsided slightly. Moreover, he could no longer use the burning heart fist. Unlike Xia's imagination, sadness couldn't simply be regarded as a kind of injury. At this time, Wang Lu used the resonance ability of the nameless sword to guide the Jade Mansion's fire to the opposite party, which was actually a very subtle edge ball. The great vow of the heart demon did not allow anyone to touch the edge. The object that Wang Lu was restricting, as well as the person that he was supervising and restricting, were all himself. No deceptive tricks on the surface of cognition could hide from his own heart. Moreover, as a form of self-restraint, the great vow of heart demons was a zero-sum game. The reward of the vow came precisely from the restraint. At the same time that he lied to himself, even if he didn't trigger the punishment of his inner demons, he would lose the reward that the oath gave him. Even if it was just an edge ball, it would greatly shake the great vow of heart demons. In Wang Lu's life plan, the existence of the great vow of heart demons was extremely necessary. Therefore, if he wanted to satisfy both sides, there was only one way: to calmly accept the fact that he had touched the edge ball, and also calmly accept the punishment of his inner demons. If the inner demons wanted to take his life, then he would burn his life as a sacrifice to the inner demons until he was satisfied. Of course, life was precious and fragile. Directly igniting the life was a suicidal path. Therefore, Wang Lu chose the path of compensation. Innate vitality is really a good thing. Wang Lu secretly sighed with emotion. If it weren't for his master teaching him this little trick, he really wouldn't be able to resist the great vow of heart demons and take the initiative to hurt the enemy. However, it was no wonder that before he went down the mountain, his master had solemnly exhorted him. Using innate vitality to touch the edge ball is fine, but you must not directly break the vow, otherwise it would be a dead end. It was indeed a dead end. Just now, he had thrown out 3 punches in succession, and each punch had 10 years of his lifespan taken away by the inner demons. The binding force of the great vow of heart demons was so appalling. Just by touching the edge ball 3 times, he had to pay the price of 30 years of his lifespan. If he directly broke the vow and brandished the sword of Mount Kuan like a wandering dragon, the Li fire and the weak water would shine on each other. Perhaps with just one strike, Wang Lu's current several hundred years of lifespan would be squandered away. However, in Wang Lu's view, the price of 30 years was still very cost-effective. Of course, it was not about seriously injuring Xia. For this kind of trash creature, spending 3 moments would be a waste. Instead, it was about using 30 years of lifespan as the price to extinguish the inner fire in his jade mansion and leave an unforgettable mark. Just now, when Lu Li was seriously injured, the non-phase immortal heart in Wang Lu's jade mansion crazily operated, and a blood-red flame flowed out from it, burning everything in the jade mansion. That was the authentic inner demon fire. Because of Wang Lu's great vow of heart demons, once he faced a great emotional fluctuation, it was possible to draw out this kind of demonic fire that was comparable to the heavenly fire. After Wang Lu's 3 punches quelled the sea of fire, his jade mansion soon restored its calm. However, on the surface of his non-phase immortal heart, a black mark that was difficult to eliminate was left. Of course, if it had to be eliminated, there would always be a way. However, Wang Lu wanted to keep it so that he could always remember this lesson at the cost of 30 years of his lifespan. A professional adventurer was indeed very powerful, but it was still far from being omniscient and omnipotent. A little bit of carelessness and he couldn't even protect the people around him who were worthy of his attention. Wasn't it good to have this kind of understanding? As for the poison in Lu Li, that was another problem. After 3 punches, Wang Lu's mood calmed down. Feeling the change in Wang Lu, Xia was like a drowning man grasping at straws. Thinking that he had found a chance to survive, he hastily opened his mouth to say, "Do you think that just because you came from one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, you can run amok in 9 regions? You elite disciples all have life-saving elixirs given by your elders, which can detoxify thousands of poisons. However, my devouring heart-rotting bone poison is not among the common thousands of poisons. It's not that easy to detoxify it. Moreover, I have the famous brilliant sword heart physique. Once I'm poisoned, the poison will immediately spread to the whole body. Without my help, Lu Li would undoubtedly die." As if to echo Xia's roar, Shao Qi's slightly hurried voice came. "Wang Lu Li's poison has been detoxified." Xia was stunned for a long time and then he furiously said, "You want to trick me? It's not that easy. You're just a king pill cultivator, yet you want to detoxify the devouring heart-rotting bone poison, you." While speaking, his tiger eyes looked down and saw Zen Master Guru and another bald man standing side by side, emitting a soft Zen light that surrounded Lu Li. The girl was indeed seriously injured. Her face was pale, but the pitch-black gas of the devouring heart-rotting bone poison was nowhere to be seen. This poison seemed to have been detoxified. Impossible. Xia's eyes almost popped out. Cat Girl Ling Yan's poisonous dagger was an ancient weapon with thousands of years of history that he obtained after experiencing an extremely rare immortal opportunity. The poison's effectiveness had declined a lot compared to its peak, but its strong point was its strange toxicity, which was completely different from the common poisons in the 9 regions. Even if a sect like the 10,000 Poison School wanted to detoxify it, it would be a bit troublesome. She was just an unknown Zen master, how could she detoxify it? In Xia's deduction, the only way for Wang Lu to survive was to activate the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman, immediately bring everyone back to Spirit Sword Mountain, and let the sect elders come forward to suppress the poison. However, after the Heavenly Talisman was launched, although Wang Lu, Lu Li and Quan Zuhua could go, Immortal Beast Moon Spirit and Zen Master Guru couldn't. They didn't leave their mark on the Heavenly Talisman, so they weren't sent away. At that time, even if they couldn't catch Wang Lu, they could still catch the Moon Spirit. However, now that the biggest trump card had actually failed, Xia's shock could be imagined. You want to know the principle? It's very simple. It's not that you underestimated the power of Shao Qi's detoxification, but you misjudged Lu Li's poison resistance. Wang Lu said. Because his mood was relaxed, he explained a bit more. It's a wise move not to set me as the target. Although that dagger is a spiritual object, it's a dead object. Although the poison is fierce, it has no vitality. Even if it stabs me, my own poison resistance can solve most of the poison. However, Lu Li's brilliant sword heart has a clear physique, so in theory her poison resistance is close to 0. Once the poison breaks out, even if the sect elders make a move, it would be very troublesome. However, although she has too many weaknesses, her poison resistance is the only one that's still worth looking at. While speaking, Wang Lu couldn't help but laugh. That idiot is greedy by nature. When she sees something novel, regardless of whether it's dangerous or not, she still wants to put it in her mouth. Moreover, she completely has no memory. In that peaceful place on the mountain, she has repeatedly been poisoned by food, so she has to always carry the elder's antidote pill with her to prevent her from dying prematurely. A few years ago, she went down the mountain for experiential learning for a year. She wrote the experiential learning report as a food diary, which made the elders furious. However, behind the diary is the bitterness of tasting tens of thousands of poisons in dozens of countries in the Blue River region. Do you think the sentence in the diary, "Today I ate sweet tofu pudding, meat dumplings, I feel very uncomfortable"? How much crisis and pain do you think is hidden behind it? Surviving in such experiential learning, how high do you think her poison resistance is? After a pause, Wang Lu looked at the ashen-faced Xia with a sneer. Therefore, using poison to plot against Lu Li, you're really courting death. Before his voice fell, he heard Shao Qi anxiously and angrily urged, "Don't waste time." Although her poison has been eliminated, the damage caused by the instantaneous attack of the poison can't be offset. Her situation is still very dangerous. I can barely suppress it from worsening, but she's not completely out of danger. Quickly deal with the problem and come back to help me. I know. With that, Wang Lu withdrew his fist and brandished the sword of Mount Kuan. His eyes turned cold and firmly locked on Xia. The idle talk is over. It's time to send you on your way. Chapter 210. Enough with the idle talk. It's time to send you on your way. When Wang Lu lifted the sword of Mount Kuan, this thick and simple sword exuded a cold aura like the 9th level of the abyss, which made Xia's body quivered. That was the sword's spirit, Autumn Beam's anger. Xia used a despicable means to simultaneously plot against the cat girl Ling Yan and Lu Ling. Autumn Beam, who had always been on good terms with Lu Li and sympathized with the cat girl, was already boiling with anger. At this time, with Wang Lu's Shudan stage cultivation base, the spiritual treasure seal was only left with the last 2 layers, thus its power was greatly released. Autumn Beam didn't even need to show her true form. Her anger alone was enough to make Xia's blood run cold. In theory, if there was enough magical power support, a spiritual treasure with a high enough level could fight alone. Moreover, its fighting power was not low. Therefore, seeing that Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kuan was eager to try, Xia's panic increased. Is this guy planning to sacrifice his spiritual treasure to avoid the big heart demon oath? Then, as long as he blocked the other elders, the spiritual treasure sword of Mount Kuan could fight me alone. If it was the Real Tiger King, perhaps he wouldn't be afraid of the threat of a low-level spiritual treasure, but he was. Not to mention that he was seriously injured and unable to move. Even if his injury was healed, his ability was far from being able to bring out 1/10 or 2/10 of this body's power. If he encountered a full-strength sword of Mount Kuan, he would die without a doubt. Thinking of this, Xia became even more terrified. His biggest trump card had failed. He was almost doomed to come here complacently, but he would have to return with no face. Even if he could come back alive, it was still a different matter. Fortunately, he was cautious by nature. Before he made his move, he would definitely prepare a lot of cards. Now, he had to take out the card that had been lying in ambush for the longest time and had the biggest side effect. Wang Lu, you can't kill me? Because it will dirty my hands? It doesn't matter, I'm not afraid of being dirty. Wang Lu lightly said, his imposing manner becoming more and more powerful. Although he knew that he was bound by the big heart demon oath, Xia still felt that the opposite party seemed to be able to rush up at any time and use the crudest and most direct means to kill him. Therefore, he hurriedly said, I have people in the Yu clan of Celestial Water Lake. This trump card was really unexpected. Wang Lu let out a soft cry of surprise and slightly restrained his momentum. Celestial Water Lake? Seeing that his trump card worked, Xia suddenly felt lucky to have escaped from the jaws of death. However, things had not been settled yet. Wang Lu could turn against him at any time. Therefore, Xia didn't dare to take it lightly. His brain quickly organized the wording to achieve the best effect. You came to Yunzhou to gain experience and pretended to be a cultivator from the Yu family of Celestial Water Lake. It's because you have a junior sister from the Yu family of Celestial Water Lake in Lingjin School, right? Wang Lu nodded. Yes, by her convenience, Lu Li and I got 2 identities. So, when you learned about this, you sent people to Celestial Water Lake? Well, although the Yu family has some reputation in the last 2 generations except for Yu Xinyao, the others are not good. Even the head of the family is barely a high-level Taoist master of King Pill. Moreover, although they have the cultivation, they are not good at fighting. They are a family famous for refining tools, so their strength is not strong. If your Beastmaster school were to use force to threaten me, the Yu family would not have the ability to resist. So, you want to use the Yu family to threaten me? Xia said, I don't dare to say it's a threat, but I hope you must think about it clearly. There's no need to make it a lose-lose situation. Wang Lu sneered. Lose-lose situation? Is there something wrong with your brain? Even if the Yu family people die, what does it have to do with me? Xia seriously said, don't pretend. As far as I know, you shouldn't be that kind of person. Although your reputation is in dispute because of the earth-shattering bet in the sect competition a few years ago, none of the information shows that you are a cold-blooded cultivator who is cruel to your own people. On the contrary, most of the information speculated that you have a protective mentality. Ah, well said. Wang Lu laughed. Although in theory whatever your Beastmaster school did to the Yu family, you should bear the responsibility alone. However, I won't completely stay out of it. After all, when I asked for junior sister's identity, it means that once I provoke an opponent, it will implicate her family. However, I want to ask you, when you bought the information from the intelligence merchant at a high price, did it ever mention that I'm an idiot? Xia was stunned. What kind of question is this? If he answered seriously, of course it was impossible. On the contrary, Any of the information would focus on describing Wang Lu's intelligence. Perhaps purely in terms of intelligence, there was no evidence to prove that he was smarter than those famous geniuses in the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, more proficient in calculation. However, at least he was absolutely not an idiot. And from his own experience, Xia also boasted that he was smart, but ever since he confronted Wang Lu, every confrontation was a complete rout. Now that Wang Lu asked such a question, could it be that? I've long guessed that some despicable people would use this to threaten me, so I've made preparations in advance. You think that your evil plan has succeeded, but in fact you're just showing off your shamelessness for no reason, Wang Lu said. Obviously, his stature was not as tall and sturdy as Tiger King's, but he revealed a condescending and disdainful look. What a pathetic creature. You want to trick me, right? Xia's mind heated up, and his mood suddenly went out of control. Do you think I'm an idiot? Guessed that this might happen and took precautions in advance? You really have such foresight. How could you not expect that the cat girl Ling Yan was sent by me as an undercover agent? Moreover, you still have a clear conscience in accepting her as your subordinate, and thus seriously injuring your baby junior sister. Upon hearing Xia's roar, Wang Lu's smile disappeared, and his brows gradually furrowed. That's right, it was indeed his own judgment error that caused Lu Li to suffer this ordeal. Although it didn't lead to the worst result, it was not Wang Lu's credit. If it weren't for Lu Li herself testing the poison for many years, this time, the situation would be really troublesome. Although being pointed at and scolded by a wretch was somewhat unfashionable, nevertheless, it was an impressive lesson. Seeing that Wang Lu didn't speak, Xia thought that he had guessed correctly and began to laugh wildly. Sure enough, I guessed it right. You're tricking me. Actually, in normal times, although Xia had a variety of flaws, he was not an impulsive person. It was just that, after being hit by Wang Lu's burning heart fist twice, his rational mind was damaged, and his heart was set ablaze. Thus, his mood could no longer be controlled. While laughing, he took out a crystal mirror. I've already let Chi-Ho take the spirit beast to Celestial Water Lake. Although he was seriously injured and couldn't be of use, he carried my token, which allowed him to command a spirit beast that has been in human form for a long time. That spirit beast's cultivation base is infinitely close to Yuanying's stage, and it alone can flatten more than 100 people of Yu family at Celestial Water Lake. A day ago, I got the news from Chi-Ho that I've exchanged my token for that spirit beast's promise. Now, I've probably already controlled the entire Yu family. Whether they live or die, it all depends on your reaction. While speaking, he reluctantly transferred a trace of magical power into the mirror, activating the mechanism, and then light and shadow were reflected from the mirror. That was the magical tool that he gave to Chi-Ho to maintain contact with him. Now, as long as he let Wang Lu see the scene of Yu family being completely controlled by him, he believed that he would make a rational choice. Moreover, if he operated it well, perhaps not only he could save his own life, he could even ask for the immortal beast moon spirit. That was something that even the real Tiger King couldn't do, but in his hand there was a hope for a comeback. This should be enough to show that he was stronger than the real one, right? Thinking about this, time passed by bit. A moment later, Xia suddenly discovered that, although the crystal mirror in his hand reflected light and shadow, the light had been distorted and blurred, and he couldn't see the real face. This was because the two sides holding the mirror did not strictly synchronize the magical power, which caused the distortion. Bing didn't care. At this time he was outputting Tiger King's magical power, which was quite different from the original, so it was normal for there to be a change. However, as long as Chi-Ho adjusted it, the two sides could synchronize. Chi-Ho, what are you doing? Hurry up and adjust your magical power, Xia angrily urged. At this time he had yet to recover from his serious injury, so he didn't have the energy to adjust the magical power. After waiting for a while, the light in the mirror was still unstable. Xia felt that a haze had once again gathered in his heart. It seemed that something important was about to go wrong. Actually, I'm not a genius who calculates everything. What I can do is nothing more than to do things in detail. Before I went down the mountain, I guessed that I might bring trouble to you family, but it's impossible to predict in advance what kind of trouble I would encounter, what kind of opponent I would encounter, and it's even more impossible to invest a lot of resources to strengthen the defense. With so many resources, I should just keep them for my own use, okay? Therefore, I took advantage of the situation. This time, in addition to me and Lu Li going down the mountain, there are also other disciples in the sect who got the opportunity to go down the mountain for experiential learning. Junior sister Yu Xinyao happened to be planning to go home to visit her family, so I told her that she could take this opportunity to invite other senior brothers and sisters to her home as a guest. Yu family is a big refiner, so we could take this opportunity to send some magical tools to form good karma. And at that time, the one who came with her as a guest, Wang Lu said, deliberately tantalizing him. After a pause, he revealed the answer. The one who accompanied her is our big sister of Spirit Sword Mountain, Zhu Shiyao. Zhu Shiyao. Xia gawked for a moment before he remembered that she was the head of the successor disciples of Lingjian school, the peerless genius whose strength was even above Wang Lu and Lu Li. However, no matter how talented she was, her current cultivation base was at most low-level Shudan stage. In the face of a spirit beast that was close to Yuanying stage, she had no chance. That was one of his most proud works in the Southern Heaven region as a beast tamer. Compared to the cat girl Ling Yan, its strength was many times stronger, simply not on the same level. The only hateful thing was that, because of some lucky coincidences, the imprint on that spirit beast was not particularly stable. Therefore, he could only occasionally ask for help from him, but could not enslave it as he pleased like he did with Ling Yan. With him, along with a large number of low-level spirit beasts that formed the 10,000 Beasts Great Array, a mere Yu family of Celestial Water Lake and a Shudan stage Zhu Shiyao. While he was thinking, the light and shadow in the crystal mirror suddenly changed. Xia was inwardly delighted, thinking, Chi-Ho, that idiot, finally reacted? He should have succeeded. Not only the Yu family but also Yu Xinyao, who went home to visit her family, as well as that Zhu Shiyao. All of them should be under his control. That is an out-and-out brilliant achievement as long asked. In the throbbing heartbeat sound, the light and shadow finally condensed into shape, and a voice came from the mirror. It was Chi-Ho. However, at this time his face was full of blood, his body was seriously injured, and his voice was weak. Phil. That person is so strong. You never told me before that there would be such a person. With just one sword strike, that shape-shifted spirit beast was beheaded. Even its primordial spirit couldn't escape. We are now... Crash. Chi-Ho's voice abruptly stopped. It turned out that Xia had inadvertently crushed the mirror. His body trembled uncontrollably, indicating the infinite despair and panic in his heart. This time it was really over. Chapter 211. Sending Chi-Ho to the Celestial Water Lake Yu family was undoubtedly a dangerous move, even a dead move. At first, it was just to verify the identity of Wang Lu and Lu Li through the channel of the Celestial Water Lake. And this step was indeed very fast. Chi-Ho infiltrated the Celestial Water Lake Yu family and soon found out the truth, an unexpected truth. When Xia learned that Wang Lu came from the Lingjian school, one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, the fear in his heart once overwhelmed his greed. The 5 uniques of the Wanxian League were not as simple as being one level stronger than the top-ranked sections. Except for the special case of the Lingjian school, the other 4 super sects, no matter how the later generations painted them, in the end, their status was piled up by mountains of corpses and seas of blood. More than 6,000 years ago, the Age of Chaos disintegrated the almost absolute ruling position of Kunlun Immortal sect. 2,000 years ago, the Great War of Immortals and Demons established the supreme status of Shengjing sect. 10,000 Arts sect and Royal Soldiers sect also took advantage of the situation and established their own sections. The rise of Spirit Sword Mountain was relatively low-key. Since its establishment 4,000 years ago, its tentacles have always been limited to the Blue River region, never expanding outward. There was quite a controversy in the Wanxian League as to why it could be on par with the other 4 super sections. However, from one point of view, Spirit Sword Mountain absolutely could not be ignored. Since its establishment 4,000 years ago, Lingjian school had never lost in a foreign war. At least, no sect dared to confidently say that they had won against Lingjian school in a sect-level large-scale war, none of them. Therefore, Xia absolutely did not want to provoke Lingjian school. Even if Lingjian school's influence outside of the Blue River region was notoriously weak, even worse than some middle-rank sects, it was, after all, one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. If it was just teaching Wang Lu a lesson until he was disheveled and even bleeding, Spirit Sword Mountain would not have too much of a reaction. For these super sects, if their talented disciples suffered setbacks, not only would it not damage their reputation, it would also be a good thing. It could let their arrogant disciples grow up step by step. So what if they lost some face? Only Royal Soldier sect was relatively protective. However, if Xia used despicable means to threaten a sect disciple's family, then it would be a different matter. Lingjian school would never tolerate such a despicable act. As for how to retaliate, Lingjian school had no precedent. However, if they followed the example of the Shengjing sect, one of the 5 uniques, Beast Master School wouldn't be able to be ranked among the top-ranked sects in the next 200 years. Xia certainly didn't want to provoke such a terrifying opponent, but at this time, his life was at stake. Did he have a choice? His biggest trump card had failed, so even if he knew that it was like drinking poison to quench his thirst, he could only do it first. However, he never would have thought that things would change so quickly. In order to be on the safe side, although he had ordered Chi Ho to pay close attention to the Yu clan's manner a day ago, the real order to take action was actually made after Wang Lu had cracked his first trump card, which was just a few sentences ago. Therefore, rather than saying that Wang Lu was deceiving him, it would be better to say that he was deceiving Wang Lu. Chi Ho and his shape-shifted spirit beast had indeed arrived at the Celestial Water Lake Yu clan, but they didn't make their move to start the war. Of course, in Xia's calculation, a spirit beast at the limit of King Pill, plus the 10,000 beasts array arranged by Chi Ho, would be able to control the situation with just a few sentences. However, he didn't expect that after a few sentences, the situation had undergone such a dramatic change. Big Sister is indeed Big Sister. She's always so mighty. I thought that after Mai and Lu Li's fortuitous encounter, even if I can't surpass her, at least, I would be able to keep pace with her. It seems like I still have to practice. Wang Lu repeatedly clicked his tongue, but each of his words made Xia's mood further fall to the bottom. However, it was also at this time that Xiao Qi's primordial spirit voice rang in Wang Lu's ears. Enough. Why are you talking nonsense with that trash? Don't you know that talking nonsense is easy to be overturned? My situation here is not optimistic, why don't you hurry back? There was still a mocking and disdainful smile hanging on Wang Lu's face, but in the primordial spirit conversation with Xiao Qi, his voice was full of helplessness. Go back. What's going on? Including the Beast Master School's spirit beasts, there are 20 King Pill level experts around me. I'm in midair, my feet don't touch the ground, and my non-phase method hasn't reached the realm of void facing the wind yet. Do you really think I can kill my way in and out? Xiao Qi was also stunned. You. In other words, just now, you were impulsive and rushed into the enemy's formation, and then you were trapped there and couldn't come back? Well, even when you raised your sword to behead Xia, it was also a pretense? In fact, you can't even make your move? Then what should I do? Do you need my help? Are you going to let go? Forget it, I can solve it myself. Even if I don't make my move, it doesn't matter, it won't take too long. I'll have to trouble you to hold Lu Li's side, I'll be back soon. With that, Wang Lu cut off the conversation with Xiao Qi and turned his attention back to Xia. All of his cards have failed, Xia was really forced into a dead end. His mind was at a loss, and infinite despair was reflected in his tiger head. However, at this time, he heard Wang Lu leisurely open his mouth. If you want to live, I'll give you a chance. What? Kneel down and apologize, hand over your antidote and I'll spare your life. Of course, don't get me wrong, I really need the antidote. It's nothing more than to let my junior sister quickly end her pain. If you don't hand it over, it doesn't matter to me. Xia's eyes showed a struggle. A moment later, he tremblingly took out a small blue bottle from his mustard seed bag. Wang Lu took it and directly threw it to Xiao Qi in the full moon valley behind him. Okay, I'll take the antidote. Next, as long as you kneel down and apologize, I'll let bygones be bygones. Xia hoarsely said, do you dare to swear? Big Heart Demon Oath, say you'll let bygones be bygones. Wang Lu laughed. Big Heart Demon Oath? It doesn't matter. Do you really think your life is valuable? In my opinion, the life and death of a trash like you is really not important. Therefore, if you kneel down and kneel properly, it will make me feel better. It doesn't matter if I let you live. Next, Wang Lu really called out the Heart Demon and made an oath in front of the Heart Demon Oath. Moreover, the binding scope of the oath was wider than Xia expected. I swear, as long as he kneels down and begs for mercy in front of me, my friends and I will never harm him again. If I violate this oath, I'm willing to die under the entanglement of the Heart Demon. When Xia heard Wang Lu's understatement of the oath, his intuition told him that there must be a trap. However, on the one hand he was seriously injured and his Dao heart was damaged, so his thinking ability had fallen to the bottom. On the other hand, in order to survive, he had no other choice. Therefore, after struggling for a long time, he finally slowly lowered his body. Since he was in midair, his knees naturally couldn't touch the ground, but his kneeling action was exactly the same. You're ambitious. Wang Lu didn't even spare him a glance. He contemptuously smiled, turned around and walked away. Xia, who was kneeling in midair, slowly moved his eyes along with Wang Lu. However, he suddenly found something wrong. How could he just let him go like that? He alone rushed into the enemy's formation, obviously surrounded by so many experts, but he actually just walked away like that? Did he make a mistake? However, before his dull brain could think deeper, he heard Wang Lu chuckle and said, "Elders of Beastmaster School, why haven't you made your move yet? What are you waiting for?" This fake swindled and swindled, profaned the dignity of the great elder Lei Jin, and almost brought a huge disaster to your Beastmaster School. According to your school's rules, killing him on the spot is reasonable. Xia felt like a bomb exploded in his brain. Wang Lu's plan suddenly became clear. No matter how slow he was, he still understood. This guy was really a despicable and cunning person. Although I'm hostile to your great elder Lei Jin, I recognize that he is a respectable man. He has strength, courage, and responsibility. If I didn't have the help of the mountain spirit, relying solely on my own cultivation base, I may not be his opponent even after 10 years. If it were any other occasion, I would be very willing to make friends with him. With that, Wang Lu looked back at the Beastmaster School elders. Led by Elder Gong Yang, there was an unusually complex look on his face. Obviously, his heart was deeply shaken by Wang Lu's words. And the great elder Lei Jin that I approve of would never use this kind of despicable trick. Hey, coercing a poor cat girl to act as an assassin for you, trying to kill a young girl, and even using an ancient strange poison. Even the behavior of the demon race was not as despicable as this. Moreover, when you failed, you even used other people's family to threaten them. Aren't you afraid of the divine punishment for such a despicable act? Speaking to this, the Beastmaster School elders revealed a look of shame. Obviously, they were also deeply ashamed. No matter how many people criticized the conduct of the Beastmaster School, they were not a sinister and despicable sect. Xia's conduct was completely not recognized by them. If it's the Real Tiger King, even if he really did an unjust act for various reasons, he would certainly persist until the end, even if he had to die. At least, he would never kneel down to others in order to drag out an ignoble existence. Wang Lu said, and then helplessly spread out his hands with a smile. That's why I say a fake is a fake. At the beginning, his performance was somewhat realistic, but when his life is in danger, his true colors are revealed. Xia, you only have this bit of skill. Xia? Hearing this name, several elders were shocked. Wang Lu asked, what are you pretending for? He has already acted to this extent, yet you really can't see his identity? Forget it, I've done what I should say and do. Now you guys can clean up your own sect. With that, Wang Lu no longer lingered. His figure floated down, and his figure rapidly shrank in Xia's line of sight. Xia felt his brain was buzzing. At the last moment he was really unwilling to let it end like this. He loudly shouted, Gong Yangyue Liangyu, what are you waiting for? You just let him go like this? Hurry up and catch him for me. If he could catch Wang Lu, there was still a chance to turn things around. As the division's great elder, even if he was seriously injured and dying, as long as he was still in control of the division, then... Enough, you bastard. What answered Xia was a beast-toothed sword that pierced through his back and came out of his chest. Elder Liang Yu's eyes were red, and his hair stood up in anger. All his life, the great elder was magnanimous. Unexpectedly, after his death, his reputation was tarnished by a filthy person like you. You used the great elder's body to do such a shameless act. 100 deaths can't atone for it. Xia struggled to say that he was the great elder. However, the injury that broke out in his body made him unable to say a word, and his sight soon fell into darkness. What exactly did I do wrong? I'm obviously better than the Real Tiger King, how could I become like this? Why do you, this group of mediocre people, refuse to obey me? If you could let me command you from the beginning, the ending would definitely be different. Idiot. In the darkness, Xia suddenly heard a roar. The familiar voice startled him. In the darkness, a burly body gradually emitted a glimmer of light. That person had a tiger face and a human body. It was actually Tiger King Lei Jin. How could you? Aren't you dead? Why are you here? Am I also dead? Impossible, how could I die? Humph, you're indeed not dead, though not by much. This body and nascent soul are both mine, why can't I appear? Tiger King coldly snorted. What do you think? Using my body to play my role, are you happy now? Xia was stunned, and then he clenched his teeth. Yes, I did fail, so you're gloating over my misfortune? Tiger King scoffed at this. Do you think you're worthy for me to gloat over your misfortune? If that Wang Lu failed, I would actually laugh a few times. With that, Tiger King couldn't help but sigh. Speaking of which, I'm the one who harmed you. All these years, seeing how pitiful you are, knowing that your temperament has become more and more extreme, and your means of doing things are also unbearably despicable, yet I let it slide. I even acted as your umbrella to shelter you from the wind and rain, allowing you to become more and more arrogant, thinking that just because you have a bit of crooked talent, you would be successful in every endeavor. You went further and further on the wrong path until finally there's no turning back. Humph, to die in the hands of people like you, I only have myself to blame. Xia was stunned. What protective umbrella are you talking about? Tiger King coldly said, if it weren't for me protecting you, do you think that disciplinary elder would let you go just because of what you've done in the sect all these years? Do you really think it's because your beast taming skill is good that you've been recognized by the higher-ups? If it weren't for me protecting you, you would have been locked in the black beast cage for 1,000 years. Now that I think about it, perhaps I should have let you live in the black beast cage for a few years. At that time, the sect leader also advised me that spoiling you too much would only harm others and myself. At that time I just treated it as fart, but now it seems like I'm really blinded by lard. Xia's heart was filled with shock. How come I never knew about these things? Tiger King cast him a glance. Is it necessary for you to know? Why do you have to do so much for me? You were pushed out from the southern heaven region to the cloud region, could it be? Tiger King said, hey, why do you have to do so much? Do you still need to ask? Unfortunately, in these past few decades, I really didn't know that you're actually so reluctant. I remember that at the very beginning I declared that if you don't like it, I won't force you. As a result, you took the initiative to crawl over. All these years you've really endured humiliation. Listening to the ridicule in Tiger King's words, Xia's heart was filled with mixed feelings. He even quietly felt a trace of guilt. However, in the end he still stubbornly said, you can only blame yourself for being blind. Tiger King laughed. Well said, I'm indeed blind and lost my brain, so I deserve to die in your hands. However, in any case, I'm smart for once before I die. Xia, after you took over my body, although my heart was filled with hatred, the words of a dying man are also kind. I thought that these past few decades were mostly happy, so I wanted to give you a final piece of advice. Unexpectedly, before I opened my mouth, you impatiently pounced on me. Therefore, your father, finally bit my tongue to commit suicide, swallowing that advice. What advice? Your father, want to warn you, you can provoke anyone, but don't provoke that kid Wang Lu, However, even if I told you at that time, you probably just treated it as fart, so you deserve to die here. Xia gritted his teeth. I won't die. That's not up to you. Tiger King's smile faded, and the light on his body suddenly became intense, illuminating the surrounding scene. It was not the Jade Mansion or Primordial Spirit that Xia expected, nor was it the Crown Cloud Peak or the Full Moon Valley, but a place filled with dense smoke. A huge stone gate stood in front of him, and the towering figure exuded a heart-palpitating aura. This is, Tiger King coldly said, welcome to the gates of hell. Ghost. Okay, let's go in together. I don't want to die, go to hell yourself. Xia frantically struggled. However, when he brandished his fist, he found out that the strong body that he inherited from Tiger King had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by the emaciated body that he hated and cursed. Such a body had no resistance in front of Tiger King. Tiger King picked up Xia and laughed wildly all the way into the stone gate. From now on, we have endless time to love. Your father, swear that I will make you fall in love with me, Chapter 212. How is Lu Li's situation? After calmly withdrawing from the encirclement, Wang Lu's feet landed on the ground. The indifferent look on his face was immediately replaced by a trace of irrepressible anxiety. Xiaoqi gave him a blank look. You finally remembered the business? Really, when you're hot-headed, you don't care about anything else. Do you think you're mighty just because you rushed into the enemy's formation? Impossibly stupid. You've been bragging about the quality of a professional adventurer. Wasting time with a trash, you're really childish. Wang Lu urged, less nonsense, let's get down to business. What's the situation? You still have the face to urge me? Xiaoqi shook his head helplessly. The situation isn't that great. Xiao Yoli's poison resistance isn't bad, and with the antidote, the poison was quickly expelled. However, the dagger pierced her vitals, and with the poison erupting at the beginning, the damage is real. With that, Xiaoqi bent down, turned the unconscious Lu Li over, and tore open the clothes on her back, revealing her snow-white back muscles. A black wound was ugly entrenched on her back, and along the wound, a black line spread to the rest of her body. Seeing the wound, Wang Lu could not help but frown. From the knowledge he learned in Teng Cloud Hall, with the basic skill of Lingjian School's disciples, once they reached Chudan stage, their bodies would be highly tempered, and their vitality would be far stronger than that of ordinary cultivators. Even Lu Li, who was known for being good at attack but not good at defense, her body's toughness was close to that of a common sex Taoist master King Pill. In theory, even if her heart was stabbed by a knife, she would not die, especially with the help of a Zen master like Xiaoqi. Even if her head was cut off, as long as it was immediately reattached, she could still live. However, now that Lu Li was wrapped in Zen light, her injury did not improve. It could only be said that her injury had been so serious that it could not spontaneously enter the positive circulation. Just like if a person suffered a minor injury, the body could heal itself. However, if the injury was too serious, the loss of life would be far higher than the body's production capacity, even higher than the speed of treatment, which was incurable. Right now, Lu Li's situation was similar to this. Although the wound was not big, the damage inside was very serious, to the extent that it could not be healed at all. That dagger is indeed an ancient artifact. In addition to the poison attached to it, the structure of the dagger's blade is also very vicious. Look at the blade, there are very fine forks on it, and they form a destructive structure with each other. When it enters the body, it can quickly kill the vitality just like a vicious curse. Speaking of this, Xiaoqi gritted his teeth and said, "That bastard is really cunning. Even if I get the antidote, I have to go all out to keep Liu Li alive. I can't even relax a little. How vicious." Wang Lu waved his hand. "There's no need to argue with a dead person. Concentrate on the current problem." While speaking, his brows furrowed, and his mind tried to recall what he learned in the Teng Cloud Hall. Every book on healing that he had read in the past 10 years of cultivation emerged one by one in Wang Lu's mind. After a long while, Wang Lu said, "Liu Li's problem is that her injury is too serious, and she lost too much vitality. The essence of the healing spell of Zen is to stimulate one's own vitality. If one's own vitality is insufficient, the Zen method can't be used without rice. Since that's the case, how about directly supplementing her innate vitality?" Wang Lu said, "Although it's difficult to share the innate vitality of different people, Zen has the art of salvation, and all living beings are equal, so there should be a related spell, right?" Xiaoqi frowned and said, "I can, but right now I'm just a doppelganger. I have the king pill in the body, but I don't have the innate vitality." I know. Moreover, how could I ask you to contribute your innate vitality for this kind of thing? I'm going to catch several Beastmaster School bastards to sacrifice their lives." With that, Wang Lu got up and was about to start the fight again, but he was quickly stopped by Xiaoqi. "Wait a minute, Lu Li's brilliant sword heart and physique are pure. Ordinary people's innate vitality is turbid for her, which is harmful to her." Wang Lu asked, "Then what kind of innate vitality is needed to meet the standard? Is Paimu 2, 5 less than 50? Or do you want to make a purifier?" Xiaoqi glanced at Wang Lu and somewhat helplessly said, "In addition to having a high enough cultivation base and a pure enough method, it also needs to be a virgin boy and a virgin girl." Virgin? Wang Lu was suddenly stunned. He then looked up at the noisy group of Beastmaster School cultivators on the Crown Cloud Peak, and then turned his head back. With a complex look he sighed. "My mood right now is very delicate." Xiaoqi wryly smiled. "I can understand. To directly introduce other people's innate vitality into Lu Li's body, not only the quality of the innate vitality is very high, the quantity requirement is also very astonishing, because the consumption in the middle would be very astonishing." Wang Lu interrupted, "It doesn't matter. Saving people is more important. I can afford the price." Seven looked at him and said softly, "Does it matter even if it takes 100 years? Wang Lu gawked. 100 years? Is there a need to be so exaggerated? But then, without hesitation he said, 100 years is 100 years, just take it. While speaking he stretched out his hand and pressed the wound on Lu Li's back. However, the touch was stiff and cold, causing Wang Lu to frown. Not long ago the girl's body was as soft as jade, but now, it was full of rotten death aura. Bastards of the beast taming school, this matter will not end here. However, although Wang Lu was ready to lose 100 years of his lifespan, Xiaoqi couldn't make his move. You've always been shrewd, you should know what losing 100 years of lifespan means, right? Now that your cultivation base has reached Chudan stage, your lifespan is only 300 years. Even if non-phase method has the ability to prolong your lifespan, it's only limited to 500 years. Losing 1/5 of your lifespan is not only 100 years, it will also have a serious impact on your immortal cultivation. It's very likely that you will encounter a great bottleneck in the future. Wang Lu disdainfully said, if there's a bottleneck then I'll just break through it. How could a dignified void spirit root be afraid of a bottleneck? Losing 100 years of lifespan in one go, perhaps, it will reduce the quality of your spirit root, causing irreparable impact. Does that not matter? It doesn't matter. Saving Lu Li is the first priority. In any case, I'm a professional adventurer, who am I afraid of? What's more, my void spirit root is not enough to deceive me. If the quality of my spirit root declines, then so be it. At worst, I'll just walk the path of mortal cultivation, so I won't necessarily be worried to death. You. Seeing that Wang Lu's will was incomparably firm, Xiaoqi inwardly sighed with emotion. The master and disciple of Non-Phase Peak were really carved from the same mold. Usually, they were so cheap that they wished they could beat them to death, but in critical times, they were more reliable than anyone else. This kid was young, but he already had the demeanor of his master. Perhaps, losing 100 years of lifespan was an opportunity for him to make a breakthrough? However, just as he was about to make his move, he suddenly heard a faint woman's voice. Use mine. Xiaoqi turned his eyes in surprise and saw that the cat girl Ling Yan, who had been unconscious after being severely injured by Quanzhou Hua, had opened her eyes and weakly but firmly said, all of this was caused by me, so naturally I should make up for my mistake. If innate vitality can save her, no matter how much, I'm willing to pay. Xiaoqi's complexion was complicated. You, the cat girl said, although I've been tortured by a xia for decades, according to your human standards, I am still a virgin. Wang Lu laughed. What kind of green tea setting is this? Obviously you've been defiled by a xia for decades, but you're still a virgin. Only your nostrils and ears are still virgins. You, a xia is withered. Wang Lu's smile froze and then he awkwardly touched his nose. You continue, I won't interrupt. Use mine. My innate vitality will definitely meet your needs. Moreover, please give me a chance to atone for my sins. With that, the cat girl's voice became more and more miserable, full of self-blame and remorse. I've personally hurt the person I love the most. Now I really want to die. Xiaoqi said, at that time you had no choice, so it's not your fault. Moreover, since you have the heart, I believe Lu Li will forgive you. As for the innate vitality, your quality is far from Wang Lu's. If he wants 100 years, you may want more. Even if you're a spirit beast in human form, and your natural lifespan is longer than human beings, you still can't bear it. Unfortunately, Xiaoqi's consolation had no effect at all. The cat girl's figure suddenly moved, and like a lightning, she rushed to Lu Li's side. The two arms that were bitten off by Quanzhou Hua were bleeding at the same time. She then pressed the severed arms on Lu Li's back, letting her blood flow directly to Lu Li's wound. After a moment, the blood seemed to be burning, flashing with platinum light. You? Xiaoqi was taken aback. The cat girl actually forcibly burned her innate vitality. She didn't give other people the opportunity to stop her. Thus, in addition to receiving her overflowing innate vitality as soon as possible, there was no other way. He couldn't let her self-sacrifice go to waste. In desperation, Xiaoqi hastily operated his Zen technique and used the method of expiation to pour Ling Yan's innate vitality into Lu Li's body. With the influx of vitality, the gray color on Lu Li's wound quickly faded, and her originally stiff body gradually recovered its vitality. Lu Li's vitality was recovering at an alarming rate, but correspondingly the cat girl was weakening at an alarming rate. A cultivator's innate vitality was extremely precious. Even if the cat girl had reached the peak of King Pill stage, it was impossible for her to squander her innate vitality at will. With the rapid loss of vitality, her body shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. Her human characteristics gradually degenerated, and the cat characteristics gradually strengthened. A moment later, her whole body almost shrunk by half. The whiskers on her cheeks became longer, her pair of cat ears became more conspicuous, and behind her thighs grew a hairy tail. This was the spirit beast's reverse form transformation. When its life was extremely exhausted, the transformed spirit beast might instinctively revert to its original beast form, using its wildness to prolong its life. However, once this process occurred, it meant that its original 100 years of bitter cultivation might be completely wasted. Once it completely reverted to its beast form, it would never be able to successfully transform its human form in this lifetime. The cat girl's repentance was so firm that she didn't hesitate to sacrifice her life. For a time, Xiaoqi couldn't bear it, but what could she do? Did she really want Wang Lu to sacrifice his 100 years of lifespan? How could she even open her mouth? But at this moment Wang Lu shook his head and took the initiative to stretch out his hand. That's enough. What will she do when she wakes up like this? As he spoke, Wang Lu gently placed his hand on the cat girl's shoulder. A similar platinum light shone, and the cat girl's body trembled. The transfer of innate vitality was forced to stop. Wang Lu directly sent his vitality into the cat girl's body, which was like a vast ocean, extinguishing her spontaneous flames. Before the cat girl could ignite her vitality again, Xiaoqi directly swung the Buddhist staff and knocked her unconscious to the ground. Wang Lu stepped forward and took over the cat girl's position. It's better for me to do this kind of thing. If I let a stupid cat save the world, how can I, as the senior brother, show my face? As he spoke, his forehead was already dripping with sweat. Releasing innate vitality was not easy for Wang Lu. But at this moment, a creature that had been ignored for a long time quietly spoke. Everything in this world started because of me, so let me end it. While Wang Lu and Xiaoqi were stunned, the immortal beast-like cocoon not far away shone brightly. Chapter 213. The existence of the immortal beast moon spirit had indeed been ignored for a long time. After Wang Lu summoned the spirits of all living things on the Grand Cloud Mountain to break through Tiger King's blockade, the Emperor essence spread all over the Grand Cloud Mountain, and the immortal beast moon spirit also took this opportunity to start the transformation process. It absorbed the moonlight, built a cocoon of light, curled itself up in it and slowly transformed. For a common spirit beast, the transformation process had to go through the heavenly tribulation. Cultivation itself was against the heaven's will, not to mention the transformation from beast to human. Of course, after the end of the age of chaos, the intensity of the heavenly tribulation was not that high. As long as one was adequately prepared, there was usually nothing that could not be overcome. Catgirl Ling Yan's innate talent could be considered excellent. When she transformed, she had to withstand 3 strikes of Gungjin Divine Thunder and successfully broke through the bottleneck. However, when it came to the level of immortal beast, even the heavenly tribulation was omitted. Perhaps for the heaven's will, the transformation of the immortal beast was the heaven's will, and there was no need to obstruct it. Therefore, the transformation process of the Grand Cloud Mountain's moon spirit was very smooth and quiet. So much so that when the situation was urgent, Wang Lu and the others even subconsciously ignored the immortal beast around them. Until this time, the immortal beast moon spirit took the initiative to issue its own voice. Everything in this world started because of me, so let me end it. As the light and ethereal voice sounded in the full moon valley, the cocoon of light shone brightly. Although Wang Lu's eyes had undergone special training, they were still dazzled by the light. However, he could still vaguely see the outline of a beautiful woman. He slowly walked toward Lu Li and reached out his hand to gently touch her wound. Almost in an instant, the death aura in Lu Li's body was completely expelled. Full of vitality, like the sunshine, penetrated into every corner of her body. Lu Li uttered a cry as her injury was completely healed. However, she was still asleep and didn't immediately resuscitation. As Lu Li was completely out of danger, the light of the moon spirit quickly converged, revealing its true appearance. Wang Lu stared dumbfoundedly at the successfully transformed moon spirit in front of him. Even though he was experienced and knowledgeable, for a moment he didn't know what to say. After the moon spirit transformed, it was just as Wang Lu had expected. She was an extremely beautiful and refined young girl. She looked to be about 16 or 17 years old, and her eyebrows were 80 to 90% similar to Fairy Yun Tai. However, she was more vigorous than Yun Tai, and her eyes also carried an irrepressible curiosity and quick-wittedness. After withdrawing the light, the girl wore an intoxicating smile and said to Wang Lu, "Thank you." It was rare for Wang Lu to calm down. He coughed, cleared his throat and then said, "You're welcome. I have an agreement with Grand Cloud Fairy, so these are all things that I should do. It's just that, don't you want to wear some clothes?" Moon Spirit, who had just finished transforming, naturally maintained its original state, completely naked. Her voluptuous chest, slender waist, and plump buttocks all outlined a perfect curve. Her figure was slender and graceful. Of course, the most fascinating and sensitive part of a woman's body could also be seen at a glance. As a professional adventurer, Wang Lu would never feel cramped because of a mere nude woman. However, he also had to admit that Moon Spirit's flawless figure was by no means as simple as mere nude woman. Her soul-stirring beauty, even with his non-phase immortal heart, could not help but palpitate with eagerness. Moon Spirit gawked for a moment. She innocently and lightly walked around in front of Wang Lu. "Don't I look good? Why do you look so embarrassed?" Wang Lu said. "I remember that Grand Cloud Fairy's white dress is whiter than snow. How come it turned into the Emperor's white dress?" Moon Spirit said with a smile. "Mom said that the clothes on her body symbolize the bondage of the world of mortals. She hopes that I can live freely in the future, so I think I shouldn't wear clothes, right? But since you think it's not suitable, it seems that there's a big difference between my perception and reality, then." The girl raised her hand and the sensitive part of her body lit up with white light, blocking the sight of others. "Unexpectedly, you're from the Holy Light Party?" Wang Lu couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself. Seeing that the girl was determined, he no longer tried to persuade her. In any case, the other party was willing to give out benefits, so why should he stop her? "Let's quickly display the good student's photographic memory and remember as much as we can." At the beginning of the human form transformation, the immortal beast was ignorant of worldly affairs, ignorant of human feelings, pure as a white paper. However, looking at her demeanor, she was not like Lu Li and Quan Zhihua who gave up treatment. When she was in her immortal beast form, she was still mainly beastly. However, after her human form, her mind was enlightened, and her rationality grew. After 3 to 5 days she would be familiar with the rules and naturally she would have a sense of shame. At that time, there would be no such beautiful scenery. However, this trip to the Grand Cloud Mountain had finally come to an end. Moon Spirit had taken human form and the enemies were all dead. Basically, everything that could be done had been done. Now, as long as they could bring Moon Spirit back to the mountain, this experiential learning trip would be a success. And in order to avoid a long delay, they would directly use the Heavenly Talisman. Although the value of the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman was not cheap, compared to the Immortal Beast, it was just a drop in the bucket. Thus, Wang Lu didn't hesitate to use it. He took out the Heavenly Talisman from his mustard seed bag. It was a glittering and translucent, jade-like talisman, which was carefully written with thousands of characters. Each character contained a mysterious power. The lower half of the talisman was left blank, which was the place where the user left his own mark. Once the mark was left on the Heavenly Talisman, as long as one was within 100 meters of the Heavenly Talisman, he would be pulled into the transmission array and sent to the designated location. Currently, only Wang Lu, Lu Li, and Quan Zhihua were left on the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman. Now it needed the Cat Girl, Xiao Qi and Moon Spirit to leave their names on it. A Heavenly Talisman could transport 10 people, so there were still a lot of empty spots. Seeing this life-saving Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman, Xiao Qi couldn't help but sigh with emotion. "In the past, when I was traveling with your master, she always talked about this thing for a long time. She said that if she had this Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman to save her life, she would dare to explore the 9 regions. Unfortunately, I've never seen her collect enough sect points." Wang Lu snorted disdainfully. That poor girl almost sold her kidney every day. If not because the sect leader pitied her and gave her an elder's tribute every month, she would have held the 99% sign and went to the mysterious sky mansion to block the door. Xiao Qi left his own unique mark on the Heavenly Talisman and said with a smile, "Don't slander her like that. Although her personality is indeed a bit, but she's actually very good at making money." Wang Lu was surprised. Very good at making money? Could it be that there are people in the Wanxian League who buy moral integrity at a high price? No, she's actually very business-minded. She's made a lot of money in several businesses. However, while she's good at making money, she's also good at spending money. She's not the same as you, her cultivation consumption is very terrifying, so, while explaining with a smile, Xiao Qi picked up the cat girl, who was in a trance because of burning her innate vitality. He pulled out a strand of her whiskers and when the cat girl meowed in pain, he melted the whiskers into a stream of pure magical power and left 2 words on the Heavenly Talisman: Spirit Smoke. Finally, only Moon Spirit was left. The girl looked at the Heavenly Talisman. "Although I don't understand what it is, it looks very powerful. What is it used for?" "To take you away from this place and back to my Spirit Sword Mountain." "Away from here?" The girl looked up and softly asked, "This is my home. But there are evil guests wreaking havoc in your home, while my great Spirit Sword Mountain has beautiful scenery, fragrant flowers, rich spiritual energy and big fish and meat." Xiao Qi said, "Hey, isn't this not neat at all?" The girl's interest was obviously aroused. "Is it a very interesting place?" "Of course it is. Moreover, Grand Cloud Fairy doesn't want you to be trapped in the Grand Cloud Mountain. The world is big, you can travel everywhere." The girl vigorously nodded. Ma'am, I understand. Mom said you're a trustworthy person, so I'll go with you. So, do you want me to leave a mark on the heavenly talisman? How do I do that? Wang Lu said, add a bit of innate vitality to your real name. Well, your real name must be a name that resonates with your heart. I remember that Grand Cloud Fairy left you the name Shirshin, so you still lack a surname. Why don't you take my surname Wang? Moon Spirit shook her head. No, I want my surname to be Bai. As you wish. Wang Lu indifferently handed over the heavenly talisman, waiting for the other party to condense the mark. The girl named Bai Shirshin gently shook her finger and began to condense her own mark. This immortal beast transformation was really an innate magical ability. Generally speaking, people who had never condensed their original life mark would need at least a period of time to integrate their real name into their innate vitality, and then combine the two to form a mark. However, Bai Shirshin waved her hand and the mark was formed, looking like a crescent white moon. However, just as Bai Shirshin was about to integrate the mark into the heavenly talisman, Xiaoqi's complexion suddenly changed. He waved his monk staff in the air. The next moment, the monk staff issued a buzzing sound, and the Zen light was like a covering half of the sky in the full moon valley. However, in an instant the Zen light was pierced and crushed by a sharp beam of light. Xiaoqi let out a muffled groan, staggered back a few steps, and his 7 orifices overflowed with blood. That beam of light was blocked by Xiaoqi's Zen technique, but as if it was alive halfway through, it once again accelerated to stab Wang Lu. Wang Lu instinctively retracted his right hand that was holding the heavenly talisman, only to feel a burst of pain in his hand. A few of his fingers had been cut off, but fortunately the heavenly talisman was not damaged. However, the crisis had already arrived and the drama was about to come to an end, but now there was another wave. Despite Wang Lu's good mentality, he could not help but feel a bit anxious. In particular, that spell just now, its momentum was fierce and overbearing, and its power was incomparably great. Moreover, its magical power seemed to have a life of its own, which was a typical characteristic of a Yuanying stage cultivator. Moreover, it was a Yuanying stage cultivator whose cultivation base was even higher than Tiger King. Don't even think about leaving. Along with a roar that shook the valley, a dark cloud came from afar, blotting out the sky. Although it was far away, the clouds revealed a majestic aura that suppressed all living beings, which made people breathless. Wang Lu struggled to look up, trying to see through the dark cloud. However, what was reflected in his line of sight were thousands of strange phenomena. In the dark cloud there seemed to be 10,000 beasts galloping, thunder and lightning, and there was a storm. Wang Lu quickly shook his head. His non-phase immortal heart floated high above his jade mansion, and then, together with his primordial spirit, void core and non-phase emperor bone, he got rid of the erosion of these strange phenomena. My goodness, peak Yuanying stage. Raising his hand and lifting his foot, there was a strange phenomenon, and his primordial spirit could invade and disturb people's heart. All of these showed that the cultivation base of the person who came had reached the peak Yuanying stage. His heart was the will of the heaven, so there were dark clouds blotting out the sun, and there were strange phenomena. At the same time, his primordial spirit was highly released, and there was a faint tendency for it to multiply, so that people who touched it would be disturbed. In the entire Wanxian League, this kind of cultivation base could be regarded as quite an expert. If one only considered cultivation base, the elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall of Spirit Sword Mountain were also at this level. However, the person who came was naturally not an elder of Spirit Sword Mountain. A moment later, the dark cloud dissipated, revealing a dignified and solemn elder. That person was dressed in black, and his whole body was surrounded by thunder and flame. His 2 thick arms were crossed in front of his chest, and his arms were covered with black scales, which made him look even more ferocious. Xiaoqi sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Beast Master School's disciplinary elder? Chapter 214. The Disciplinary Elder? Hearing Xiaoqi's exclamation, Wang Lu's heart sank. The position of disciplinary elder, in an ordinary sect, was ranked among the top 5 great elders. Their strength and status were far superior to Tiger King Lei Zhen, this kind of small feudal lord. To put it simply, they were the leaders from the central government. If in the face of Tiger King, Wang Lu could still use various means to win a slim chance of survival, but in the face of a peak Yuanying stage great elder, no matter how confident he was, it was difficult to say that he had a chance of winning. However, all of this was not too difficult to understand. In terms of the value of the immortal beast, It was not unusual for the great elder of the Beastmaster School in the Southern Heaven region to be alarmed. Previously, Wang Lu inferred that with Tiger King Lei Jin's temperament, he would never easily let the great elder of the Beastmaster School in the Southern Heaven region get involved in such a big benefit. But now that Tiger King was dead, it just gave the great elder of the Beastmaster School an excuse to intervene. Wang Lu has tried his best not to waste time. After Moon Spirit resuscitation, he immediately prepared to leave the heavenly talisman and run away. While chatting along the way, his hands were not delayed, but unexpectedly he was still too late. Sure enough, the greater the benefit, the greater the risk. In the face of such a strong crisis, Wang Lu, while trying to think of countermeasures, asked, Seventh Madam, I urgently need help." But he heard Xiao Qi with a complex expression said with a wry smile, "I'm afraid I'm not a suitable person to ask for help. Right now I'm just an avatar. Even if you ask me, I can't do anything. Don't forget, he is the Beastmaster School's disciplinary elder." Wang Lu immediately understood. Beastmaster School's cultivators often have spirit beasts as companions. This disciplinary elder seemed to be alone, but how could he not have a spirit beast? Xiao Qi was only a middle-grade king pill. Even if she risked her life, she could only focus on one opponent. If the other side fought separately, she would not be able to attend to one thing and lose sight of another. It was impossible for her to give Wang Lu enough time to let Bai Shixian leave her mark and activate the heavenly talisman. Damn it, this is an endless loop. Wang Lu furrowed his brows. Even though he was intelligent, he still felt that this was a thorny problem. Time passed bit by bit, but he knew that under the suppression of a peak nascent soul cultivator, no matter how much time passed, it would be difficult for him to find an opportunity to place a mark on the moon spirit. If I had known this would happen, I would have let Shixian be the first to imprint the mark. Xiao Qi was quite upset. She was just a doppelganger. Even if she died, she would only encounter a slight obstacle on the path of personal ability enhancement. Why did she have to be the first to leave a mark? Hearing this, Wang Lu said, "How could they let Qingyang sacrifice herself like this? Moreover, the other party has already arrived at the Yuntai Mountain and waited for this moment." Just as he finished speaking, the black-clothed elder in the sky nodded and said, "That's right. You guys can leave, but leave the immortal beast behind." That's right, he was waiting for everyone to leave their mark and only Moon Spirit was left before he made his move. In this way he should be glad that he left Bai Shixian until the end, otherwise there would be more people who couldn't escape. Wang Lu narrowed his eyes. His brain turned rapidly and at the same time he opened his mouth and said, Shut up. There's no room for you to bargain or show off your cleverness here. I'm only letting you scram for the sake of the Lingjian school behind you. Otherwise, you would have unscrupulously destroyed my Beastmaster School's division's territory. Even if I wanted you to be hacked into pieces." The black-clothed elder didn't put Wang Lu in his eyes at all. Even if he was the famous Lingjian School's peerless genius several years ago, at this moment he was just a shoot-on-stage ant. His innate aptitude was far inferior to Wang Lu's, but with just a thought he could kill him. As for the Lingjian School, the Wanxian League's 5 uniques indeed couldn't be underestimated, but the Beastmaster School wasn't someone who could be easily bullied. Not to mention the matter of the Yuntai Mountain, no matter where it was, the Beastmaster School was in the right. The Yuntai Mountain was the Beastmaster School's territory. Wang Lu and the others clearly came to make trouble. Even if he killed them on the spot, it was still reasonable. Of course, the ownership of the Yuntai Mountain hasn't been fully recognized by the Wanxian League. However, in recent years, it had long been under the actual control. This was the unwritten rule of the Wanxian League, so the black-clothed elder didn't feel that he had anything to be afraid of. Even if the Lingjian School wanted to stir up trouble in the future, the head of the Beastmaster School would come forward. He came from the Southern Heaven region under the instruction of the head of the Beastmaster School. If Tiger King Lei Jin was still here, perhaps it would be inconvenient for him to interfere. After all, although Lei Jin's cultivation base wasn't too high, his popularity in the sect was still good. He paid a huge price to come to the Cloud region just for this immortal beast. If he didn't let it go, the sect wouldn't be able to directly snatch it. Now that Lei Jin was dead, he came forward to clean up the situation. Wang Lu and the others could go, but the immortal beast Moon Spirit must stay. Wang Lu saw that the other party's attitude was completely unfavorable, and his heart sank. The other party clearly wanted to ignore all the rules and use their fists to talk. As far as he was concerned, there was nothing he could do. "I'll count to 3, either you get the hell out of here or you die here." After the black-clothed elder finished speaking, The black scales on his arms suddenly moved and turned into two pitch-black flood dragons. They wandered around his whole body and from time to time, they revealed a fierce look towards Wang Lu and the others. My goodness, two flood dragons as pets, he's really worthy to be the central leader of the Beastmaster School. Wang Lu clenched his teeth. He really couldn't find any opportunity. 1. The ice-cold counting sound resounded throughout the valley. The disciplinary elder of the Beastmaster School released more magical power, and the thunder fire around his body became several times more violent. With the nourishment of the thunder fire, the two flood dragons' bodies also fiercely swelled up, and their faces became more ferocious. From time to time they would spit out lightning which hit the surrounding rocks of the Full Moon Valley, igniting a mountain fire. What a hateful evil beast! Seeing the Full Moon Valley on fire everywhere, Bai Shixian couldn't help but frown and softly expressed her disgust. She was the daughter of the Grand Cloud Fairy, the current spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain. The flood dragon's demonstration action brought harm to the mountain, which was like an injury to her body. However, at this time, compared to the mountain fire, there were more important things to pay attention to. Wang Lu, I can't go, can I? Bai Shixian looked at the dark clouds in the sky and lightly asked. Wang Lu sighed. You really gave me a good problem. While speaking, his heart began to calculate. If he didn't hesitate to burn his innate vitality and cast out the immature innate non-phase diamond sword, would he be able to withstand one or two moves from a peak Yuaning stage cultivator? Or awaken Lu Li and combine their swords? From a professional adventurer's point of view, Bai Shixian's problem was without any suspense. She indeed couldn't go. However, such an answer was completely unacceptable to Wang Lu. While he was pondering, he saw Bai Shixian turned around and smiled. Wang Lu, thank you. Wang Lu asked, what are you thanking me for? Bai Shixian blinked her eyes and explained, because you let me experience the feeling of freedom, which Mom said is the most precious treasure. She said that she is the spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain. This mountain gave her life, but it also gave her shackles. I am luckier than her, I cannot be bound by the mountain, but I am also more unfortunate than her, because I would be coveted by the mortal world's greed, and it's very likely that I would be taken away just as I mature. But because of you, at least from the moment of transformation until now, I think I am free. In the silence, the cold countdown from the sky once again sounded. The two black flood dragons greedily swallowed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth of the Grand Cloud Mountain. Along with the catalysis of the thunder fire of the black-clothed elder, their bodies further expanded. In the blink of an eye they turned into a giant creature like a small mountain. This kind of flood dragon, which was about to cross the heavenly tribulation, was a magical beast with enough power to destroy the world in many myths and legends. Ordinary cultivators, even if they were at the peak of the King Pill stage, would not be able to last more than 2 or 3 moves in front of them. The two flood dragons moved together, the dark clouds in the sky rolled, lightning and thunder rumbled, as if the vault of heaven was collapsing, and the end of the world was coming. The several people in the Full Moon Valley were like duckweed in a stormy sea, completely without the ability to resist. However, Bai Shixian turned a blind eye to everything in the sky, and the young girl's smile was still bright. Although the time is not long, I think I will always remember the taste of freedom. At this time, that black-clothed elder coldly said, remember? Wait until I put the beast-taming trap on your neck, you will not remember anything. Not ever. Bai Shixian turned a deaf ear to him, and just smiled as she asked Wang Lu, you will come to pick me up, right? Wang Lu only felt that his throat was somewhat blocked, and he really didn't know what to say. Yes, he was a cultivator with heavenly spirit root, and his talent in immortal cultivation was unprecedented. One day he would be stronger than anyone. At that time, the entire beast-taming school would not be able to withstand a single punch from him. But, what was the use of that? The blue sea turned into mulberry fields, how many one day were there in life? There will come a day. This was the most worthless sentence of all. Bai Shixian had not been in human form for long, but she was exceptionally intelligent, and had already clearly understood her own situation. Now what she said to Wang Lu was actually to comfort him. She comforted him by saying, you have done a very good job, and there is still a chance to redeem yourself in the future, so don't be sad and don't make irrational choices. Wang Lu closed his eyes, and his heart sighed with emotion. Little Bai, you're still a bit tender. With you comforting him like this, how could he possibly leave? And just as Wang Lu and Bai Shixian were speechless, the impatient elder finally dropped the last word. 3. At the end of the count, the two flood dragons were like heavenly thunder descending to the world, wrapped in thick dark clouds, as well as the angry thunder from the clouds pouring down. However, the black-robed elder still had some misgivings. Although the flood dragons had the power to destroy the world, their momentum was not fast, giving Wang Lu and the others a short period of time, allowing him to clearly consider whether to die here, or wisely launch the heavenly talisman. Of course, if Wang Lu didn't know what was good for him and tried to use this short period of time to play some tricks, the reaction speed of a peak Yuanian cultivator was much faster than that of a Shudan. The time that the black-robed elder gave was not long, but for Wang Lu, it was like 100 years had passed. Under the incomparably harsh and oppressive environment, as well as the extreme emotional fluctuations, he felt that his primordial spirit, Emperor Bone, Shudan, immortal heart, had an unprecedented high degree of integration, and with the help of his innate vitality, a subtle reaction occurred. At this moment time seemed to stop. Thousands of thoughts flashed through Wang Lu's mind, and each thought was clear and distinct. His sense of the surrounding spiritual energy had become thousands of times more sensitive, and within a radius of 100 meters, he was aware of every fluctuation of spiritual energy. Looking at the seemingly still spiritual energy, Wang Lu even vaguely felt that he could predict the direction of the movement of these spiritual energy. At the same time, in Wang Lu's eyes, the two flood dragons' thunderbolt attack was no longer a deadly move. In the thick dark clouds there was a vague flaw, a glimmer of hope. Perhaps in terms of probability, the possibility of defying the natural order was only 1 in 1,000, or even 1 in 10,000, but ultimately there was hope. Therefore, without hesitation, Wang Lu began to move. He inhaled and exhaled magical power, and with a subtle rhythm he led the surrounding spiritual energy to surge and resonate. His innate vitality also burned, ready to integrate the energy in his body to make a life-risking blow. As long as this blow could be stopped for a moment. Bai Shixian was not stupid. She naturally knew how to seize the opportunity to leave her mark, and then activate the heavenly talisman so that everyone could escape. All she needed was a moment. When Wang Lu burst out his unprecedentedly powerful sword qi, the sleeping Lu Li suddenly responded on her own. The empty and bright sword qi was dispersed by her and turned into a thin mist, which tightly combined with Wang Lu's magical power, making the final push for the eruption of Wang Lu's magical power. Time was incomparably long. Wang Lu clearly saw the sudden change in the complexion of the black-clothed elder above the clouds. He clearly saw the two flood dragons, upon receiving the order, burst out with bloodthirsty madness, and no longer held back their attack. He clearly saw the millions and millions of spiritual energy around him groaning and breaking under the pressure of the dark clouds. He clearly saw that in his jade mansion the half-real and half-illusory void core emitted a blazing golden light. Under the quenching of the innate non-phase sword qi, it became twice as thick and indestructible as before. It was as if a ray of light flashed through Wang Lu's mind. Although the result was still unclear, although the dark clouds in the sky still seemed unstoppable, he had enough confidence that he could win. He could definitely block this sword strike. The next moment, when the two forces were about to collide with each other, on the horizon, the golden light tore through the dark clouds, and an emerald green sword light, like a meteor, flew from the horizon faster than lightning, traversing across the world where time was almost stagnant. The emerald green sword light was faster than anyone could imagine. In an instant, it arrived at the center of the battlefield. The sword light went up and faced the pair of ferocious flood dragons head-on. The earth-shattering sound swept across the sky, shaking everyone until the sky and earth turned upside down. A buzzing sound filled their minds. The two ferocious flood dragons turned into black powder without any struggle and disappeared without a trace. The black-clothed elder in the sky screamed and fell diagonally. "Reckless thing, you dare to rob my non-phase peak's immortal beast?" The fifth elder's white dress was as bright as the sun. In the full moon valley she looked like a deity. Chapter 215. All along in Wang Lu's mind, his master's image had never been that of an expert. Although from a rational point of view, as the founder of non-phase method, a peak Jindan stage cultivator, Wang Lu himself should be the clearest about how powerful Wang Wu was with her more than 100 layers of non-phase method. However, since he became her disciple, the image that Wang Wu showed in front of her disciple was really unbearable. Most of the time in non-phase peak she had nothing to do. She had the image of a drunken woman. Occasionally she would be chased by Lu Xian, Fang He and other elders, forcing her to flee like a stray dog. In the past 10 years, the only time he saw her fight seriously was with Taoist Master Jifeng of Xingjing sect. However, she played down that fight and didn't really show her real skill. Not to mention that although Jifeng's stage was high, he wasn't good at fighting. Trampling on this kind of minion didn't prove her ability. Then today Wang Lu finally opened his eyes. The screaming black-clad elder who fell from the sky was by no means an ordinary person. His peak Yuanying stage cultivation base, his two fierce and belligerent flood dragon spirit pets, as well as that pitch-black spiritual treasure level leather coat, all showed his power as a high-rank sex disciplinary elder. This was a genuine peak Yuanying stage cultivator. Even in the entire immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, he was still an out-and-out expert. However, in the blink of an eye, his two spirit pets were destroyed by Wang Wu's emerald green bamboo sword. Even he himself suffered a backlash from the magical power, which nearly shattered his Yuanying. His miserable and abject image doubled the contrast of Wang Wu's awe-inspiring power. How to establish an expert's image the fastest? It was very simple: beat other experts into dog shit, and then you would be an expert. And at this time Wang Wu was undoubtedly an out-and-out master. Wang Lu's non-phased diamond sword, which he had gathered all the energy in his body, failed. Although he promptly withdrew part of his magical power, he still felt a burst of soreness and powerlessness. Especially after the life and death crisis was resolved, his heart relaxed, but he also felt exhausted. Wang Lu was mentally exhausted, but it was difficult to suppress the joy that welled up in his heart after the big turn. He looked up at the sky and saw his master, who was wearing a white dress and holding a bamboo sword, disdainfully looking down on all living beings in the Full Moon Valley. The light of the King Pill was like the sun shining in all directions, making it difficult for people to look straight at it. A moment later, Wang Lu sighed as he tried to stare at the golden light with his strong eyesight. Master is also a member of the Holy Light Party. However, his slight lament was quickly suppressed by a cold voice. Xiaobo, I haven't seen you for more than 20 years. You've really become capable. Over the Full Moon Valley, Wang Wu's cold sneer was like the howling cold wind, freezing people's hearts. The black-clothed elder fell from the sky. At this moment, his hands were holding onto a rock wall, barely supporting his body. Hearing this, his face darkened, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Wang Wu sneered and said, threatening my disciple, injuring my friend? These things don't matter. Wang Lu said, I think it does matter. Wang Wu said, but you actually have an idea on the head of my non-phase peak's immortal beast. Even if you die 100 times, you won't be able to redeem yourself. However, as soon as this remark came out, Xiao Bo's somewhat suppressed imposing manner suddenly rose up. This Yuanying stage elder, who was known for his fierceness, used his jade mansion to digest the injury, and at the same time, did not hesitate to consume his life's essence to enhance his imposing manner. He coldly said, your non-phase peak's immortal beast? What a joke. With that, he let go of the rock wall. Behind his black leather coat, a pair of pitch-black wings sprouted out, which slowly lifted him up into the air, keeping pace with Wang Wu. Grand Cloud Mountain is my Beast Master School's territory. The immortal beast moon spirit is a creature of Grand Cloud Mountain, so naturally, it belongs to my Beast Master School. Your Lingjian School's people can forget about taking it by force and trickery. Wang Wu did not budge an inch. What a joke. Just because I was born on Grand Cloud Mountain, I should be your Beast Master School's property? Then I'm also on Grand Cloud Mountain, do you want to take me as your slave? Wang Lu whispered, he didn't say slave. Wang Wu coldly snorted. Taking a beauty if not slave, then what else? Xiao Bo ignored the master and disciples' pestering and just said, for this immortal beast, Beast Master School has been planning for more than 5 years, and they have used countless manpower and material resources. Wang Wu laughed. Then this immortal beast immediately refused. Xiao Bo, don't make people laugh. Is spending a lot of manpower and material resources reasonable? There has never been such a rule in the immortal cultivation world. According to what you said, if one day a waste like you prepared 999 spiritual treasures to propose to me, would I agree to it? Wang Lu sighed. I think you will agree. Xiao Bo said, interesting. My Beast Master School painstakingly planned for many years, but I don't have the qualifications to be the immortal beast's master. Your Lingjian School's disciples just made a big fuss here, and you confidently want to take away the immortal beast. Wang Wu, you've been cultivating for more than 100 years, why don't you tell me, when has there ever been such a cheap thing in this world? Wang Wu smiled and said, in this world there has never been a lack of people like you who rely on their wealth and power to take away their beloved. Most of the time, the story of lovers getting married is indeed just a story. I also don't think your Beastmaster School's bastards will understand the beauty of helping others, but so what? While speaking, Wang Wu's smile disappeared, and the emerald green bamboo sword in her hand became sharp. Today I want to take away the immortal beast. If you have the ability, then come and stop me. Having spoken to this point, Xiaobo also lost the interest to continue talking. The anger in his heart surged, and the thunder and fire around his body once again condensed. You shameless slut, do you really think you have such a strong ability? Just now, I was unexpectedly attacked by you, so I was injured. Now I want to see what qualifications you, a mere king pill, have to speak loudly in front of me. Peak Yuanying stage was indeed Peak Yuanying stage. Obviously he was seriously injured, but in just a moment Xiaobo's injury had completely recovered. Once again he displayed his astonishing means. The two flood dragons that were turned into powder by Wang Wu's non-phase sword were reborn from the fire and thunder around Xiaobo. They swallowed the spiritual energy, absorbed the fire and thunder, and after a moment, grew back to their original size. At this time, the eyes of the two fierce beasts were full of vigilance. They hovered in the air, staring at Wang Wu, not daring to relax. Xiaobo himself also changed. His black leather clothes turned into a shining metal armor, which wrapped his whole body. The shape of the armor looked very aggressive. The joints and other places were full of barbs and edges. Rather than saying it was an armor to protect its master, it was more like a fully covered weapon. One person and two pets were connected by thunder and fire, a trinity of magical ability, and their strength was far more powerful than when they were separated. Xiaobo did not underestimate his opponent, but at this time he brought out the full power of a Peak Yuanying stage cultivator. He was confident that no king pill cultivator in this world could compete with him. 20 years ago he did suffer a lot in the hands of Wang Wu. However, after more than 20 years his cultivation base continued to grow, while the other party remained at the peak of king pill. She had long lost the capital to be arrogant. In this regard, Wang Wu curled her lips. I gave you face, but you don't want it. Just obediently go back. Using the excuse of being attacked as an excuse, you can't wait to come out and die. Very well, then I will fulfill your wish. Wang Wu said and turned her palm. Suddenly, the thousands of grasses and trees inside and outside the full moon valley began to tremble. Then, thousands of green lights gathered from all directions and were turned into thousands of emerald green flying swords by Wang Wu's jade-like hands. These flying swords densely surrounded Wang Wu, forming an indestructible defensive sword array. Although the leader of this array was only a king pill cultivator, in front of the Yuanying stage black clouds and thunder and fire, it did not seem weak. Wang Wu's imposing manner was even more overbearing. Xiaobo, 20 years ago, you knelt in front of me and begged me to spare your life. Today I will take back the old debt from 20 years ago. Xiaobo was furious. Empty talk. Dark clouds gathered, and one person and two dragons were hidden in the dark clouds without a trace. The dark clouds quickly spread out, as if to engulf the entire full moon valley. And inside the dark clouds, several fierce murderous intents firmly locked onto Wang Wu. The killing intent of a Peak Yuanying stage cultivator was enough to break the heart defense of an ordinary king pill cultivator, but Wang Wu, who was inside the sword array, remained motionless. Master, you can do it. Below the valley, Wang Lu saw that the opportunity had come. While shouting encouragement, he quickly launched the heavenly talisman again, and at the same time, called by Shixian to leave her mark. What a joke, who said that Master must win against Xiaobo and completely suppress the situation before she could leave. Although that could indeed save a heavenly talisman, Wang Lu had already suffered enough of the suffering of a long night, so wasting a heavenly talisman was not a pity. It was rare that the attention of a Peak Yuanying stage cultivator was completely removed from him. If he didn't leave now, then when would he leave? However, the moment when Wang Lu took out the heavenly talisman, a dark shadow quietly sprang out from his side. Like an assassination dagger in the shadow, it went straight to the heavenly talisman in Wang Lu's hand. That dark shadow was actually Xiaobo himself, who was fully armored. He covered the battlefield with dark clouds. On the surface, it seemed like he was going to fight to the death with Wang Wu, but his brain was not disabled. How could he not distinguish the priority? At this time, the most important thing was to stop the immortal beast Moon Spirit, not to argue with Wang Wu about victory or defeat. Not to mention that Wang Wu's non-phase sword defense was notoriously hard. Don't look at her cultivation base of King Pill. Her 3 feet sword defense was difficult to break even for a Yuanying stage cultivator. What was even more shocking was that behind the 3-foot sword defense, there was still 1-foot sword defense, 3-inch sword defense, and even 1-inch sword defense. Each layer was more indestructible than the previous one. The defensive power of this non-phase sword defense was simply incredible. He was confident that his strength was not something that an ordinary Yuaning stage cultivator could compare to. However, to say that he could break the opponent's multiple layers of sword defense in one breath, he was not confident enough. However, he had enough confidence that he could sneak attack Wang Wu's disciple when she was caught off guard. No matter how powerful Wang Wu was, when she set up her sword array and cast out her 3-foot sword defense, she was doomed to fail. Even if the non-phase sword defense was invincible, it could only protect him. What was the point? Now, in front of you, I injured your disciple and took away the immortal beast moon spirit. What can you do about it? Others might not know about the big heart demon oath, but how could he not know about it? Just now, I suffered a loss because I was caught off guard. Now that I am fully prepared, I will never give you a chance to take advantage of me. Through his primordial spirit, he ordered the flood dragon to entangle Wang Wu in the dark clouds no matter what. At the same time, he stretched out his hand toward the heavenly talisman. First, he broke the heavenly talisman, then he injured Wang Lu, then he took away the immortal beast moon spirit, and finally, he also had the beast controlling heavenly talisman to return to the headquarters. However, the moment his palm touched the heavenly talisman, a hard impact force poured from his fingertips, bloomed and exploded in his body. It was almost the same force as when he tried to break the heavenly talisman, but it was twice as strong as his own strength. Caught off guard, his whole arm was blown to pieces. Xiao Bo was hit by this impact force and staggered back, his face showing a look of disbelief. Who was it? Who was it that was able to block his sure kill blow? Just now, the counterattack force was clearly from the non-phase sword. Could it be Wang Lu? Impossible, he was just a Shudan, he didn't even have time to react. How could he block the full power attack of a Taoist master of Yuanying stage? While his heart was in a mess, at this time Wang Wu's voice faintly came from above. Xiao Bo, what do you think of my 300 meters sword defense? 300 meters sword defense? Xiao Bo felt his vision go black and almost vomited blood. This guy. When did the range of the non-phase sword expand to 300 meters? No, the bigger problem was that Wang Wu was restricted by the big heart demon oath. Even if this innate non-phase sword chi expanded to 30,000 meters, it should only be able to defend, so how could it injure him? The same question also lingered in Wang Lu's head. Just now, Xiao Bo's sneak attack made him break out in a cold sweat, but after his master's invisible sword chi broke out, he was relieved. But at the same time he was also curious about this new trick of saving people and injuring the enemy. He himself was the clearest about the advantages and disadvantages of the non-phase method. With the restriction of the big heart demon oath, it had no ability to injure him from a distance. Could it beach? Wang Lu, don't you understand this? After a pause, Wang Wu explained, the spirit sword heavenly talisman is priceless, okay? You broke my heavenly talisman, which is like cutting my flesh and blood. I was justified in self-defense, so I was justified. What the? For a time, even Wang Lu was stunned by this wonderful explanation. Xiao Bo couldn't help but spurt out a mouthful of blood. *CKU, is there any justice in this world? Chapter 216. The older the ginger, the spicier. Seeing his master's unreasonable non-phase wealth protection sword chi, Wang Lu was dumbfounded and could not help but fall into deep thought. If the inconceivably vast range of the sword chi could be explained by her long cultivation time and profound skill, but to injure Xiao Bo from a distance, that was another concept. The big heart demon oath did not allow for word games, let alone self-hypnosis. In order to vent the hatred in his heart, Wang Lu paid 30 years of his lifespan, but just now, his master's sword chi was calm and unhurried, without the slightest hint of life-shortening. Of course, this was very unreasonable, but the fact had already happened, so rather than complaining about the reasonableness of it, it was better to find a reasonable explanation. And there were also a few such explanations. As a cultivator who also cultivated the non-phase method and walked the big heart demon oath, Wang Lu had seriously thought about how to make full use of the existing conditions and improve his strength under the restriction of the big heart demon oath. He believed that his master released this heaven-defying sword chi in front of him because she wanted to teach him a lesson. Look, this is the road you have to take next. To achieve the effect of long-distance attack, the simplest way was to divide the body, to separate a part of the body such as nails, hair, or even flesh and blood, and then cover this part of the body on the target that needed to be protected. When the other party touched the separated body, it would immediately rebound the damage. With the peak of the King Pill realm, long-distance control of the body was completely achievable. And for the cultivators of the Lingzhen school, which focused on basic skills, they could even turn their body into a mist. Within a radius of hundreds of feet, their body would be there. If they dared to make a slight movement, they would kill them in the name of self-defense. But what his master did just now seemed to be a higher level than this. She didn't separate the body, but on the contrary, she included the spirit sword heavenly talisman into a range, and within that range it belonged to her self-defense zone. Yes, this is an extension of the concept of me, which means that under the sky, everything belongs to the king. This is also a part of your cultivation that you have to experience sooner or later. In his mind, his master's voice rang out. On the path of cultivation, there's no such thing as being alone. No matter how carefree a person is, he or she will eventually meet someone or something that he or she treasures. If the enemy can't hurt you, they will turn around and hurt them. If you can't protect them, you will have to taste the feeling of living a life worse than death. I believe you have already experienced this. Wang Lu had nothing to say and could only smile helplessly. Just now, Luli was only seriously injured, but Wang Lu already felt his heart boiling. If she really fell because of that. You care a lot about Shaoyoli? That's easy. You can't learn my move. All the land under the heavens belongs to the king yet. Your primordial spirit isn't condensed enough, but there's a folk recipe that can allow you to provide the strongest defense for Luli at any time. There's such a move? You should have taught him earlier. His master asked with great interest. Are you sure? I'm talking about dual cultivation. As long as you and Luli have a yin and yang intercourse and the spirit and body become one, the magical power of the non-phase method can be transmitted to her, and even share the damage for her. When others hurt her, you can also confidently defend and counterattack. Actually, among the submethods of the non-phase method, I'm most satisfied with this set of non-phase harmony method. Unfortunately, I haven't found a suitable target. Xiaoqi is introverted and shy, so no matter what, she's too embarrassed to practice with me. Therefore, I can only extract data from you. Wang Lu said. I'm ready to withdraw. You can slowly display your skill. With that, he took the initiative to cut off the connection. The fifth elder was both angry and amused at the same time. What's the hurry? I haven't finished my words. Even if you want to withdraw, other people have to give way. On the other side, the fifth elder of the Lingzhen school's non-phase wealth protection sword Qi completely crushed the disciplinary elder Xiao Bo's decisive blow. His blow failed. Feeling the unshakable power of the non-phase sword Qi, Xiao Bo immediately suppressed his injury and retreated. The strength of a peak Yuanying stage cultivator was, after all, no small matter. In just a few steps, his broken arm was regenerated, and the damage to his jade mansion was also completely repaired. However, his confidence could no longer be found. In terms of strength, he was confident that he would not lose to a king pill. However, several times when he made his move, he was countered in an unexpected way. Xiao Bo realized that it was not a wise move to continue to fight. Not to mention, even if he could fight with Wang Wu until both sides suffered, what's the use? If he couldn't keep the immortal beast, it would be a failure. Under the cover of the dark clouds, Xiao Bo silently calculated the present situation. His peak Yuanying stage cultivation base made his primordial spirit very powerful, which could carry out hundreds of thousands of calculations and deductions in an instant. However, even after racking his brains, he still couldn't think of a way to solve the situation. The other side only needed to buy a moment of time to escape. Even if he had great ability, he still wouldn't be able to stop them. The appearance of Wang Wu was really a headache. For now, unless there was another cultivator with the same level as him, he would go all out to suppress Wang Wu, and that person would go to suppress Wang Lu. Only then would it be possible to keep the other side here. However, in such a hurry, where could he find another peak Yuanying stage cultivator? As the dignified Beast Master School's disciplinary elder, it was already rare for him to travel thousands of miles to come to Cloud Region. In his sect, many people said that it was like using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. After all, he thought that he only needed to deal with a few Shudan and King Pill Juniors, but unexpectedly, this monster suddenly popped out. Although his strength was strong, what he was really good at was cooperating with the two evil dragons. In the war of thousands of troops and horses, fighting one against many, his offensive ability was slightly inferior. Right now, he was afraid that it was too late to ask for help. From the southern heaven region to Cloud Region was thousands of miles away, and out of his own consideration, Tiger King Lei Zhen did not set up a transmission array in the division. Relying solely on his own cultivation base, even his sect leader's senior brother would not be able to instantly arrive. While Xiaobo was feeling anxious, Wang Lu, without hesitation, pulled by Shi Xian and was about to leave his mark on the heavenly talisman. Xiaobo's eyes almost popped out of their sockets, wishing that he could immediately dismember by Shi Xian. However, the Dao heart in his jade mansion firmly suppressed this impulse, telling him that even if he rushed forward, he would not be able to break Wang Wu's non-phase sword qi and would only bring disgrace to himself. However, at this time, a gentle voice suddenly came in. My Beast Master School is very hospitable. Since you have come, why are you in such a hurry to leave? The person who spoke seemed to be close to his ear, and the voice was as gentle as the spring breeze. However, upon hearing the voice, a chill rose from the bottom of Xiao Qi's heart. Reward giver elder? Wang Lu inwardly sneered, I don't care what kind of elder you are, I'll leave first. In any case, with his master's ability, she wouldn't be left behind by the Beast Master School's trash. At this time, Bai Shixuan's claw mark has been pressed on the heavenly talisman. Wang Lu was about to activate it, but a faint fluctuation came from the heavenly talisman, which made him abruptly stop, suppressing the heavenly talisman that was about to be activated. The next moment he looked up at the sky and saw that on the crown cloud peak, there was a young cultivator with white hair and beard. That cultivator's appearance was gentle and amiable, and his pair of slender eyes were squinted into a line. However, his tightly pursed lips gave people a mean and cold feeling. At the same time, this cultivator's right palm was holding a rock-potted plant. Looking at it, that small rockery was steep and towering, like a sharp sword that pierced the sky. The mountainside was surrounded by clouds and mist. If this wasn't Spirit Sword Mountain, then what was it? The 12 peaks of Spirit Sword Mountain could only be expanded by the heaven and earth teleportation technique. From the outside, the Spirit Sword Mountain looked like a lonely mountain, and the mountain was shaped like a sword. That cultivator was holding a miniature Spirit Sword Mountain, looking down at Wang Lu with a smile. Wang Lu shook his head in a self-deprecating manner and then took back the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman. There was no need to use the Heavenly Talisman anymore. The teleportation point of the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman was the Spirit Sword Mountain. However, that cultivator used his universe in the sleeve magical ability to mimic a rockery in his palm, which produced an extremely strong interference effect. Although the probability of successful interference was only 1/3, as long as the interference was successful, it was equal to consuming the precious heavenly talisman in Wang Lu's hand. And Wang Lu didn't intend to gamble on that 2/3 probability. The Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman was cracked in this way. On one hand, that cultivator's magical ability was amazing. He was able to imitate the charm of the Spirit Sword Mountain with his own magical power. On the other hand, it was because Wang Lu had exposed the heavenly talisman to the outside world for too long. That cultivator obviously didn't come later than Xiaobo. After arriving at the Crown Cloud Peak, he has been lurking in the dark, carefully observing the heavenly talisman in Wang Lu's hand. After capturing the characteristics of the heavenly talisman, he then made a targeted move. The escape effect of the heavenly talisman could be said to be absolute, but that was only in the case of an unexpected situation. If the opponent locked the heavenly talisman for a long time, and then made a targeted arrangement, it was not uncommon for the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman to be cracked. After all, no matter how magical the heavenly talisman was, it was still a dead object. Although it had spirituality, its changes were limited. Although Wang Lu didn't mean it, the several times he tried to activate the heavenly talisman, he revealed too many flaws. Now that it had been cracked, he had nothing to say. In any case, even if the sky collapsed, his master would be there to support it. She should be able to withstand the two great elders of the Beast Master School, right? Sure enough, his master did not disappoint him at all. Glancing at the Crown Cloud Peak from the corner of his eyes, he unceremoniously ridiculed them. Yo, Li Han, you the old turtle also showed up? The cultivator called Li Han smiled. My disciple was killed. How could I, as his master, turn a blind eye to him in the southern heaven region? Although Lei Zhen, that child, is willful, disobedient, and his talent is not that good, after all, he is my disciple. Now that he's dead, I must stand up for him, just like what you're doing now. With that, he slowly walked down from the top of the Crown Cloud Peak. He stepped on the void, and each step condensed a white cloud. A moment later, he stepped on a cloud ladder from the top of the mountain and arrived in front of Wang Wu. The fifth elder of the Lingjian school? I've heard of your name for a long time. Seeing you today, it's really a well-deserved reputation. A mere peak king pill can actually make junior brother Xiaobo helpless. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I really can't imagine that someone can actually bring out the effect of a king pill to this point. Li Han said and then smiled. But what if there are 2 peak Yuanying stage cultivators? What can you do with a mere king pill? While speaking, his own imposing manner also revealed its sharpness. A burst of cold aura that could freeze everything spread out. Compared to Xiaobo's deep and gloomy aura, Li Han's magical power was softer and purer. Just a little bit of magical power was enough to make the full moon valley feel like it was in a harsh winter. The creatures inside and outside the valley began to shiver, and even the dark clouds in the sky slightly condensed, showing that his cultivation level was several times higher than Xiaobo's. Although they were both peak Yuanying stage cultivators, the difference in strength between them could be very big. This was also a common phenomenon in front of every bottleneck on the road of immortal cultivation. Although Xiaobo hated this elder who liked to pretend to be young, but since he came, the situation here was also settled. No matter how strong Wang Wu was, could she be stronger than the 2 great elders of the Beast Master School? Even if she herself had the power to protect herself, could she save her apprentice and the young immortal beast? However, Wang Wu just smiled dismissively. 2 peak Yuanying stage cultivators are good, but who told you that I only have 1 king pill here? Li Han shook his head. If Zen Master Guru was here, I would immediately withdraw without saying anything. But at this time, her avatar's magical power is almost exhausted and simply cannot fight anymore. If you push her out, I'm afraid it's useless. What a joke! Who told you that my 2nd king pill is Shao-Chi? Today I'll let you open your eyes. Along with Wang Wu's contemptuous laughter, with her as the center, a tsunami-like wave of magical power violently spread out. The faint golden light around the woman became as dazzling as the sun, and within that light, there were 2 golden cores that shone with each other. Double king pills. To deal with the 2 of you, I alone am enough. While speaking, the full moon valley has been filled with golden light, dispersing the deep cold and dark clouds outside. With the double king pill, Wang Wu released an astonishing power that was far above any king pill. In front of the golden light, the 2 peak Yuanying stage great elders were also defeated again and again, finding it difficult to resist. The number 1 king pill in 9 regions was not a lie. In the face of this horrifying scene, Xiaobo was disheartened. Li Han, on the other hand, was calm. After a moment of consideration, he made a decision. I think the problem between us should be solved peacefully. Chapter 217. The number 1 king pill in 9 regions? Lingjian School was really too modest. Li Han inwardly sighed with emotion. This was not the number 1 king pill in 9 regions, this was clearly the number 1 and number 2 king pill in 9 regions. When Wang Wu impressively showed the double king pill, Li Han knew that today's matter could not be solved by force. If 2 peak Yuanying stage cultivators had a 70 to 80% chance of winning against the number 1 king pill in 9 regions, then the chance of winning against this double king pill was perhaps less than 40%. In the Dao heart of Li Han's Jade Mansion, the early warning instinct from the beast gave him a very clear instruction. Don't lightly start a fight. Perhaps if they really fought, Li Han and Xiaobo could use the unique magical ability of Yuanying stage to save the situation and suppress the opponent. However, it was only a possibility, not to mention who knew how many cards the opponent had. The appearance of the double king pill, for Li Han and the others, not only meant that the strength of the opponent had at least doubled, but also meant that a lot of the previous information about the 5th elder of Spirit Sword sect could be concluded to be wrong. For this 5th elder, a large part of the Wanxian League people's opinion was that she was unbearable and not worth mentioning. The so-called number 1 king pill in 9 regions was more like a mockery. Her peers were all peak Yuanying stage cultivators, only she, this good-for-nothing king pill stage cultivator, could dominate. 20 years ago, when her junior brother Xiaobo fought with her, he also said that although her fighting power was far beyond the average king pill, she would be very weak in the face of cultivators above Yuanying stage. Now, it seemed that what they heard was false and what they saw was true. The number 1 king pill in 9 regions was not the king pill, but the number 1. The person who gave her this title did not compliment her because she was one of the 5 uniques of Lingjian School, nor did he ridicule her for not being able to break through the stage of king pill. Instead, he said that even if it was the king pill, she was still the number 1. As a cultivator who had experienced the peak of the king pill to the incarnation of the nascent soul, Li Han was very clear that the double king pill was almost a fantasy under the current theoretical framework of cultivation. However, she could actually break the common sense that had been passed down for thousands of years in the cultivation world. This was even more terrifying than the double king pill. It was not wise to make an enemy out of such a person. What's more, Wang Wu's display of the double king pill was tantamount to revealing her trump card. If she didn't show any mercy, it would be difficult for her to turn the situation around if she went against her. At that time, it wouldn't just be a dispute between a few great cultivators, it would also logically develop into a war between the Beastmaster School and the Lingjian School. Although the Beastmaster School was a high-rank school, and the cultivation of the head of the school was even more unfathomable, if they were to really confront the five absolutes without showing any mercy, at least Li Han wouldn't be able to bear this responsibility. In fact, nowadays most of the disputes between schools and the Wanxian League would not go to the last step. The common practice was that the two sides would show off their muscles to each other, and the one who was not confident enough would retreat. But now, after Wang Wu's double king pill appeared, her momentum and confidence were raised to the peak, while the confidence of Li Han and the others was greatly shaken. Therefore, it was better to resolve the matter peacefully. As one of the top 3 elders of the Beastmaster School, Li Han hadn't taken the initiative to retreat for a long time, but this rare retreat was not appreciated by the opponent at all. This matter can be resolved peacefully? Wang Wu shook her head and chuckled. I've already taken out the king pill, and you want me to resolve it peacefully? Li Han's expression turned serious. Otherwise, do you really want to cause a war between the two schools? At that time, be careful that the Wanxian League will implement comprehensive sanctions on your Lingjian school. Let's be clear, this is the territory of the Beastmaster School. Your disciple is robbing my school's immortal beast here, it's not justifiable no matter where you put it. Although Li Han's tone was tough, those who were familiar with his way of doing things knew that behind the strong tone was often a weak foundation. However, Li Han's point of view couldn't be ignored. If the previous fight between Wang Lu and Tiger King was just a personal grudge, then once it rose to the level of the Great Elder, it often meant a sect war. And in today's system, it was impossible to bypass the Wanxian League in a sect war, and under the framework of the Wanxian League there was still some reason. Even Xingjing's sect, when implementing the hegemony of the immortal path, they also had to pay attention to the justifiable reason. For example, there was a demonic path sacred tool found inside your sect, or the people under your sect's rule were living in destitution and so on. If they unreasonably robbed other people's treasures and killed other people's cultivators, they would immediately be attacked by others. At that time, even Xingjing's sect wouldn't be able to withstand it. Therefore, now that Li Han saw that his muscles couldn't shine, he immediately settled for the next best thing, trying to overwhelm the other side with reason. The immortal beast was most likely lost, so he wanted to make the Lingjian school pay the price as much as possible. However, Li Han's point was the same as Xiao Bo's, which was that the Grand Cloud Mountain was the Beastmaster School's territory, and the Lingjian school was tantamount to burglary. And Wang Wu was also impolite. She turned around and said, "Wang Lu, go." Wang Lu wryly smiled, stepped forward, and then said in a clear voice, "The land has an owner, but the people have no owner. Your Beastmaster School occupies the Grand Cloud Mountain, so you're the master of this place. The rocks, rivers, and even the surrounding spiritual energy can be used by you. However, the creatures on the Grand Cloud Mountain are not your slaves. They have the right to choose their own home." Seeing that Wang Wu didn't personally come forward, but instead sent a Shudan stage cultivator, Li Han couldn't help but frown. "Do you have the right to speak here?" Wang Wu sneered. "You don't want to talk? Then do it, my big king pill is already hungry and thirsty." Li Han's heart was boiling with anger. The other side let a junior disciple argue eloquently with him. The great elder clearly didn't admit that he had the qualification to talk to her face to face. He, Li Han, had been cultivating for 200 years, and he had never been treated with such contempt. Even when he went to the Xingjing sect in the past, those deity stage great elders were also polite to him. But this king pill actually... No wonder her strength was so valiant, yet her reputation in the immortal cultivation world was a mess. However, on second thought, since it was determined to have a civil and not a physical fight, the more arrogant the other side was, the more advantageous it would be for him. Now, every word of the two sides would be used as evidence to be presented to the Wanxian League arbitration body. If it was done properly, perhaps the Wanxian League would make a decision to order the Lingjian school to return the immortal beast. Of course, this decision would certainly be vetoed by the Lingjian school, but there would be a lot of room for maneuver. Thinking to this, Li Han suppressed his anger and responded to Wang Lu's statement. Beastmaster School has never treated living creatures as slaves, and we also oppose any enslavement of living creatures. Therefore, I ask the cultivators of the Lingjian School to release the enslaved immortal beast back to the Grand Cloud Mountain as soon as possible. Wang Lu said with a smile, release it back to the Grand Cloud Mountain? But Shixian herself doesn't have this intention. She has already promised to go back to the Spirit Sword Mountain with me. Li Han sternly said, although the moon spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain was transformed by the moonlight 60 years ago, her mind was truly resuscitated only after the Emperor Essence Day. Right now she's like a piece of white paper. Other people can easily deceive her. Perhaps a bone can make her close to you. How could such a decision count? Even if she's a human, she doesn't have the right to make her own decisions. She needs a guardian to look after her. Wang Lu raised his eyebrows, thinking that this guy was indeed worthy to be the reward-giver elder. His debating skill was quite good. The entry point of the topic was very incisive, not far-fetched at all. However, as the leader of a sect with hundreds of millions of followers, would he be afraid of debating with others? Since we're talking about guardian, then I might as well make it clear. 3 days ago, Shishuan's guardian, the former spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain, has entrusted her to me. Li Han's expression moved, and then he immediately asked, then may I ask where is the former spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain? Wang Lu remembered the misty fairy on the moonlit night at the tranquil lake, and his expression couldn't help but turn gloomy. She has fallen. Then there's no proof. Li Han gradually relaxed. The topic was obviously more and more favorable to him. Of course, in view of the fall of the former mountain spirit, we can't say that the immortal beast naturally belongs to us. Therefore, it's better to set her free and let her live on the Grand Cloud Mountain for 10 years. After 10 years, when her mind has matured, then she can make a decision. At that time, if she still wholeheartedly wants to go to Spirit Sword Mountain, our Beastmaster School can only give her away. Wang Wu sneered. 10 years? Give you 10 years to brainwash the immortal beast? You dare to say this kind of nonsense plan? Li Han sternly said, our Beastmaster School has always respected spirit beasts. If it's about the treatment of spirit beasts, our Beastmaster School has the advantage compared to any other sect. For example, many of our great elders are spirit beasts, and regarding the research and cultivation of spirit beasts, we are second to none in the Wanxian League. When it comes to the growth environment of spirit beasts, Beastmaster School doesn't lose to any other sect. This is already well known in the Wanxian League. Therefore, the brainwashing thing is purely your subjective assumption without any basis. At this time, the cat girl in the valley could not help but say, Beastmaster School respects spirit beasts? Then do you know that for decades Xia? Before she could finish, she was interrupted by Li Han. Beastmaster School is a big business, so it's inevitable that there will occasionally be outlaws who do things that disgrace the school's reputation. Nowadays, which sect in the Wanxian League dares to say that all of them are saints and have never made a mistake in their life? Speaking of which, your reputation as the 5th elder of Lingjian School is not that good. Wang Wu bemoaned the state of the universe and pitying the fate of mankind as she looked up and sighed. The world has misunderstood me. Li Han sneered a few times and then said, if you don't feel relieved, you can check whether we have used a forced brainwashing spell on the immortal beast or not. In these 10 years, you are also welcome to visit us at any time and provide all kinds of conditions for the immortal beast. Finally, the immortal beast herself will make a judgment on which side is more suitable for her. Wang Wu said, your Beastmaster School is the master of this place. Being close to the water pavilion seems to be unfair. Li Han said, yes, our Beastmaster School is the master of this place. Being close to the water pavilion as for fairness. Who told your Lingjian School not to set up a branch on the Grand Cloud Mountain? If you set up a branch here a few years in advance, would Beastmaster School dare to compete with the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League? The matter of the immortal beast was originally planned by us first. It was your Lingjian School who interfered, yet you have the nerve to accuse us of being close to the water pavilion for being unfair? Seeing that after several rounds of dialogue, Li Han had already faintly taken the absolute initiative, Wang Wu secretly smiled and gave her disciple a wink. I've done the job of acting as a pawn. The next decisive blow is up to you. Wang Lu also secretly smiled and gave his master a wink that said, no problem. Then he asked a question, elderly as you said, when the immortal beast first transforms, its mind is like a blank piece of paper. Even if you give her a bone, she will still follow you. So do you know why she would rather abandon this familiar home that she has lived in for 60 years and come back to Spirit Sword Mountain with me? Li Han sneered. It's nothing more than flowery words. If you really have the confidence to attract her, you should have set up a 10-year agreement with me. Within 10 years, we'll see which side can give her the best conditions and environment to grow. Finally, she herself will weigh the pros and cons and make the decision. Wang Lu shook his head and put on a look that said, "Your brain is full of environment, conditions and weighing the pros and cons. This is the biggest reason why you're not accepted by Shixian. All living things have a spirit, and the most attractive thing between living things is sincerity, not interest. If you invest with interest, you can only return with interest. Only by investing with sincerity can you return with sincerity." While speaking, Wang Lu walked to Bai Shishuan's side, gently smiled at the dazed girl, and then reached out to pull her into his arms. Then, in a clear voice he said, "Bai Shixian and I really love each other, we've already decided to marry each other." Chapter 218. Bai Shixian and I are truly in love, and have long pledged to marry each other. They had already promised to marry each other, promised to marry each other, promised to marry each other, married each other, married each other. The earth-shattering declaration made Li Han's vision go black. Motherf asterisk curse, so you still have this move. The previous rounds of conversation were just a setup, waiting for this sentence to explode. Li Han suppressed the agitation in his heart and stared at Wang Lu. He saw that the young man was tenderly and sweetly looking at Bai Shixian, and then turned his head to look at him. His expression was awe-inspiring, without the slightest fear, as if they were a pair of ill-fated mandarin ducks facing great social pressure. Li Han was so angry that he cursed in his heart, "Do you have any fucking shame? It was clearly you who came to our territory to mess things up, but now you're putting on an expression as if you've been greatly wronged? Truly worthy to be a cultivator of non-phase peak, shameless to the point of being fearless and even invincible." No wonder even with such a formidable cultivation base, his reputation was unbearable. Of course, Li Han did not believe in true love, but what could he do? Did he want the other party to take action to prove their commitment? He had no doubt that with the other party's thick skin, he would be able to do anything. What a good, true love, private commitment. Li Han's jade mansion trembled from the hatred in his heart. His nascent soul shone brilliantly, and the cold air involuntarily seeped out of his body, staining him with a layer of frost. However, he didn't say another word. Because there was nothing left to say. Although Wang Lu's move of deciding to marry her was shameless, it was indeed a good move and could be said to be a stroke of genius. The beast taming school's environment, techniques, and other objective conditions were completely vulnerable in front of true love. It was like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. In reality, this was indeed the case. Objectively speaking, the beast taming school had indeed been planning for many years. They had invested a large amount of manpower and resources to create an inescapable net. They were not afraid that the immortal beasts would not obey, but the immortal beasts did not obey. However, Wang Lu had only spent a few short days to make the immortal beast willingly follow him. No matter how worthless it was to be willing to follow an immortal beast that was like a piece of white paper, willingly was still willingly. This was a rather powerful trump card. The only thing Li Han could do was to use the excuse that the immortal beast was young and ignorant of worldly affairs as an excuse to dilute the weight of her subjective will. As a result, Wang Lu resorted to a killer move. He sublimated willingness into mutual affection, raising the weight of subjective will to infinity. If the beast taming school were to forcefully entangle them, it would be an extremely dishonorable act of snatching away their beloved. Objectively speaking, no matter how much they had suffered because of this, it was their fault for not being fated. Although Li Han's temperament was gloomy, he had also read a lot of stories and novels. He was very clear about the popular love stories of the Wuxia League nowadays. It was precisely this kind of plot. A penniless and poor boy was favored by the daughter of a big sect leader. Then, after experiencing countless difficulties and dangers, he increased his cultivation, accumulated resources, and defeated a certain immortal second generation who was betrothed to the heroine before she was born. What's more, Wang Lu was not a penniless and poor boy. He was a true disciple of one of the 5 uniques of the Wuxia League. He and the immortal beast Bai Shixian were simply a perfect match. Moreover, the love between a human and a spiritual beast was admittedly somewhat deviant. But nowadays the Wuxia League was changing with each passing day. It was precisely the era where values were constantly being updated, and Wang Lu was walking right in front of the times. If Wang Lu were to publicize this matter, not only would people not question whether or not his actions on the Grand Cloud Mountain were in line with the rules, they would instead praise him for being affectionate. Absurd? It was indeed absurd, but this was the reality. This was the F***king reality. With great difficulty, Li Han resisted the urge to make a move. With incomparable rigidity, he squeezed out a few words from his throat. Is that so? Then that's really congratulations. Wang Lu's arm around Bai Shishuan's waist tightened even more. You're too polite. Bai Shishuan was at a loss as to what to do. She raised her head to look at Wang Lu's profile. Just now, when Wang Lu and Li Han exchanged words, she had listened to the entire conversation. There were too many issues that she didn't understand, but after all, she was smart and had roughly figured out the context. The Beast Master School was unwilling to let her go, but Wang Lu was bent on taking her away. Subjectively speaking, she certainly hoped to stay on the Grand Cloud Mountain. Every blade of grass and every tree on the mountain contained her 60 years of yearning. But on the other hand, her mother had very seriously warned her to listen to Wang Lu's words. Moreover, Wang Lu also had a scent that she liked. In the end, it was really difficult for her to decide which path to take. Until Wang Lu said that they truly loved each other, and that they were privately committed to each other, Bai Shishuan's mind seemed to have been struck by a spring thunder. She was in a trance. Really and truly love each other? So he and I are actually really in love? Moreover, we've already privately committed to each other? Why didn't I know about this before? Bai Shishuan was indescribably shocked. Her heart felt as if it was overturning a sea, and the impact of this huge amount of information made her on the verge of collapse. But on the other hand, she remembered her mother, Grand Cloud Fairy, had once told her, after transforming, if there is any inexplicable doubt, then listen to Wang Lu's opinion. Grand Cloud Fairy's trust towards Wang Lu was unreservedly, and Bai Shishuan's trust towards Grand Cloud Fairy was also unreservedly. The result of these two transmissions was that, in the midst of extreme shock, the young girl resolutely chose to believe in Wang Lu. Since he said so, then I probably really have privately committed to him. Then, according to mother's words after transforming, I must be like any other woman. If I marry a chicken, follow the chicken. If I marry a dog, follow the dog. Then from now on, am I his? Feels like this is progressing very quickly, but there were more and more fragmented thoughts. As Bai Shishuan thought about it, her cheeks flushed red. In the eyes of outsiders, it simply confirmed what Wang Lu had said about privately committing to him. Li Han was even more cursing in his heart. All the good cabbages have been taken by pigs. Seeing that the situation had already been decided, Wang Wu timely came forward and said, Okay, we have to go back and arrange the bridal chamber for the couple. You guys still haven't left, are you planning to follow us? Being slapped in the face so blatantly, Li Han's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. You can be proud for a moment, but you may not be proud for a lifetime. It's better to leave some leeway. Wang Wu casually waved her hand. Yes, don't bully the young for being poor. I understand this rule. But you've cultivated for more than 200 years, you're no longer a young man, right? You? Don't bully the young for being poor, don't bully the middle-aged for being poor, don't bully the old for being poor. Finally, you say that death is a big thing and burial is a peaceful thing. Isn't that how your whole life is? Wang Wu unceremoniously ridiculed him. At the same time, the power of the Double King pill spread out unreservedly, and the golden light shone brightly. Xiao Bo, who was less shrewd, felt his blood rush to his face. 2 black flood dragons circled around his arms and roared. He was ready to fight to the death, but Li Han knew that this was the price he had to pay for losing the argument. If it was Wang Lu who was refuted by him, he would not be polite with his words and would certainly make him lose face. Ever since the Wanxian League integrated the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, the cruel and naked rules had been greatly eased. Cultivators didn't have to worry about being killed when they went out to hunt for treasures. Those who started late and had a low cultivation base also didn't have to worry about being killed by great cultivators with the reason of everyone is an ant. However, the fundamental rules that drove the operation of the Wanxian League had not changed. The weak were prey to the strong, that's all. It was just that compared to the bloody era of the past, there was a bit more civilized camouflage. Many times, reason and politeness were still pale and powerless in front of the fist. Junior brother, let's go. Xiao Bo's eyes widened as he incredulously looked at Li Han. He really wanted to ask him, as one of the top 3 great elders of the sect, how could he swallow such a vicious mockery? How could he put the sect's reputation? However, when Xiao Bo saw that Li Han was constantly releasing cold air and blood oozing out from the corner of his mouth, he realized that he was suppressing his great anger. When he turned his head to look at Wang Wu's 2 terrifying king pills, A strong sense of powerlessness suddenly rose in Xiaobo's heart. It was as if, in front of Wang Wu, he was a bit insignificant. Was this a common demonic barrier on the immortal cultivation path? When he reached the nascent soul stage, this demonic barrier would become an important obstacle. However, at this moment, Xiaobo could only swallow this bitter fruit. "All right, senior brother, let's go." With that, he and Li Han, as if by prior agreement, simultaneously flew away. Their figures soon disappeared in the boundless sea of clouds. When the two great elders left at the same time, the Beast Master School cultivators on the Crown Cloud Peak were in an uproar. However, at this time, their existence was already weak and powerless, so no one would pay attention to their reaction. The bright and clear sunlight sprinkled down, but it was unable to disperse the cold on the Crown Cloud Peak. Haha, cool. After forcing back the two great elders of the Beast Master School, the fifth elder of the Lingzhen School let out a loud laugh. She untied the wine pot from her waist and in one breath, drank several jeans of immortal wine that was full of spiritual energy. Next, putting down the wine pot, Wang Wu saw that Wang Lu and Bai Shixin were still hugging each other. She couldn't help but laugh. "Hey, when are you going to stop hugging each other? Don't tell me you guys are really going to marry each other?" But she saw that although Wang Lu's face was solemn, cold sweat had already seeped out from his forehead. The focus of her gaze changed and she saw the sweet face of a little woman, Bai Shixin, gently nestling in Wang Lu's arms. A mouthful of priceless immortal wine couldn't help but spurt out from her mouth. Wang Lu helplessly said through primordial spirit, "You've seen this scene, how could I let go? What's more, to me it's nothing more than a weapon for a verbal confrontation, but it will still damage her reputation. You've just used her, and now you're acting as if nothing happened? Isn't that too heartless?" Wang Wu almost spurted out the second mouthful of wine. "You're reaping what you sow." "Nonsense, what else could I do at that time? That Li Han is not easy to deal with." While saying that, Wang Lu felt a few faintly discernible malice coming from behind him. He didn't know whether it was from Lu Li, Quanzhou or Catgirl Ling Yan. Besides, this was simply harming the enemy by harming 800. "Hee, I'm glad to see that," Wang Wu gloatingly smiled and then asked, "I heard you just bought a good flying boat." "Forget it, who let me be your master. I'll help you solve this problem." Wang Lu hurriedly said, "Master is really loyal, but how are you going to solve this problem? Isn't that simple? Display my irresistible personal charm, let Bai Shixin fall in love with me, won't you be free?" You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.